This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
4 minutes after 10 is the time. And thank you indeed. As Amelia mentioned, our listening figures continue to defy gravity. And indeed, almost every take that you will ever hear about the UK media and what you need to become or what you need to do or what you need to be popular. So here we are. Thank you. Something rather strange is happening this morning. I don't just mean strange corners of the UK media pretending that Gary Lineker's Instagram account is somehow more interesting than 53,000 dead human beings, the increasing use of the word genocide by international experts who are able to get a proper idea of what is going on in Gaza, and imminent famine. But I guess it gives those Irish rappers a day off, doesn't it, from faux concern. But I don't mean that. I mean the front page of the Financial Times, which contains the words Brexit, Brussels and fishing. I'll say that again because you may be forgiven for thinking that it's 2015 or 2016. But goodness me. Brexit, Brussels and fishing on the front page of what is, on some mornings, the only newspaper that comes close to reflecting reality. We are a bonkers country. I don't know whether you've noticed, and I say that affectionately as part of the bonkersness. But all of the conversation about economy and growth today, which I think is probably going to get burst by Donald Trump's tariffs and possibly the impact of the national insurance stuff as well. But it's good news. Everyone's excited about it. Keir Starmer doing a lap of honour. Nobody ever mentions the billions, the untold sums of money that we have sacrificed by becoming the first population in history to impose economic sanctions on ourselves. Do you want to know a secret? Even I get bored of pointing it out. It feels so utterly pointless. Imagine if the boy who cried wolf was ignored even as the wolves were eating all the sheep. He's standing there going, wolf, wolf, wolf. And the villagers are going, oh, shut up, will you? Honestly, no one believes you. Or no one cares about all the... Listen, we were pro-sheep being eaten. We may not have said so at the time, but that's like sovereignty. We like to see our sheep being eaten. So even I get a bit bored sometimes of going, it's absolutely insane how all conversations about the UK economy ignore the single biggest influencing factor on all negativity. Not the only one, but the single biggest explanation of why things are considerably worse than they could be gets completely ignored. I like the word bonkers. I don't know whether a couple of people will add it to the list of things that they don't like you saying, but I like the word bonkers because it has a sort of agreeable bounciness to it. It's absolutely bonkers. And it turns out we've been in a sausage war, which again is evidence of how, as a country, we went from talking about almost nothing else to talking about it not at all in the space of about 6 months. And you know why, don't you? The speed with which it became clear that Brexit was the stupidest thing a country has ever done to itself was such that all of the people that told you it was a brilliant idea had two choices. They could either come clean, say sorry, and beg for your forgiveness, or they could shut up completely and barely mention it. In fact, I guess the most disingenuous and ill-informed would probably have explicitly called for you to stop talking about it and claimed that nobody wanted to talk about it anymore, an expression of such epic ignorance that you wonder whether these people should be left in charge of a stapler. So that's why we went almost overnight. Even What's-His-Chops never talks about it anymore. Farage. The only context in which Farage will talk about Brexit is if they do something to undo the damage, and he'll start bleating about betrayal. He was supposed to leave the country if it failed. I hope nobody held their breath for that to happen. So it's so weird. It's so bonkers. There's so much strange stuff going on, isn't there, about the national interest, that some mornings you sort of sit here and feel it's beyond discombobulated. It is as if we occupy two realities, one that exists and one that remains the sort of hangover or the aftermath of the suspension of reality that had to occur in 2016 to get the referendum over the line. I mean, immigration we talked about a lot this week because of Keir Starmer's hideous language. And, of course, that has done the precise opposite of what Brexit said it was going to do. And for the tiny, tiny, vanishingly small number of people who voted for Brexit because they're racist, hashtag sarcasm alert, it's done the polar opposite of what they wanted, because the areas in which immigration has rocketed is from parts of the world where people look even less, quotes, indigenous, end quotes, than our fellow Northern Europeans did, or even Southern Europeans. I mean, every single thing about it is bonkers. And I don't know whether Keir Starmer could have walked into Downing Street and started trying to undo the bonkersness, but he could have tried. And yet here we are. He's almost done the opposite. He's almost done the opposite. And that leads us to today, when the words Brexit, Brussels and fishing are on the front page of the Financial Times, and the words sausage war are on page 2 of the Telegraph, both fronting up similar stories. Did you know that sausages have become totemic in Brexit? I didn't even know that. I thought I was an expert on this stuff. They call me James O'Brexit. I had no idea that sausages had become totemic. So there are two angles on the same issues. The FT reports that preparations for a post-Brexit reset of relations between the UK and the EU have been thrown into turmoil over demands from the EU, demands from Brussels regarding fishing rights and youth mobility. The Telegraph has a rather more upbeat analysis, and it suggests that the sausage war will end in return for some fishing rights. So the EU will lift its ban on UK exports of fresh sausages, mince and other chilled meats, which you probably didn't know had been in place since the beginning of January 2021. Actually, didn't Boris Johnson once insist that could never possibly happen? I've just got a memory of him waving something in the air. Here's an image you never want to have brought to your attention. I've just got an image of Boris Johnson waving a sausage in the air. Maybe it wasn't a sausage, perhaps it was a kipper. Anyway, I don't remember. The point is this. There has been a ban in place on British meat since January 2021, and they are prepared to lift it in return for more long-term access to fishing waters. Red tape, border checks and onerous health certificates introduced as a consequence of people voting to reduce red tape, border checks and onerous health certifications would be lifted. You'd also see food products, other food products having all of the red tape dramatically reduced in a new veterinary deal. It means, are you bored yet? Are you bored yet? It's a weird one, right? It used to be the most interesting story in town. I'm beginning to think it had absolutely nothing to do with imports or exports, red tape, fishing, meat, or any of the above, and all to do with something else. Because one of the things that they're demanding is a 4-year deal on fishing rights to replace the agreement that was struck in Brexit trade negotiations. Right, that's the dry bit over. Here's the weird bit. Ready? There's two questions I'm going to ask, one of which you need to have quite a lot of qualifications to answer. By qualifications, I simply mean knowledge and experience, two things that have always been sadly lacking from almost all conversations with the word Brexit in the title. But what has happened to our fishing industry since the Brexit that was supposed to deliver it so much actually happened? I mean, if you stop for a minute and think about how prominent fishing was. There was that poor woman in Lowestoft who used to ring us all the time. Do you remember? If you stop for a moment and reflect upon how prominent fishing wasn't Farage on one of the key committees in Brussels? He never turned up, needless to say, but he obviously understood the salience of it as a rabble-rousing tactic. Although I think the speed with which the entire fishing industry got thrown under a boat speaks of what other areas of the country may experience if they continue to back that particular horse. But the prominence of fishing was absolutely extraordinary. It was probably the thing you'd think of first if you set aside immigration and asked yourself why it was important that we leave the European Union. Do you remember? I'm not misremembering, am I? If you managed to set aside immigration, which is obviously impossible to do, but if you tried and you said, why do we have to get out of the European Union? And people would say fishing. They're stealing our fish. I think you can see where the second question is going to go. But the first one, very simply, is what has happened? 0345 6060 973. What has happened to fishing since Boris Johnson told you that we had to leave the European Union to boost British fishing, since Nigel Farage told you that we had to leave, that leaving the European Union would deliver untold glories and riches to the UK fishing industry? Do we know what the impact has actually been on the UK fishing industry? Because it was supposed to be a game changer. That's one of the most boring questions I've ever asked you, isn't it? But I am quite intrigued to hear what your answer to it is. I think the answers will be a lot more interesting than the question. What actually happened to the fishing industry of the United Kingdom, when we did the thing that we were told would really help them? All right, hit the numbers now. You will get through. 0345 6060 973. And then this is a really personal enthusiasm. And this is a question I want you to take a moment to think about and then call me. Because I can't think of anything else. You possibly can. Didn't Rees-Mogg start talking about British fish being happy? I mean, I use that word bonkers with some justification. I'm not sure things were ever more bonkers than in regard to fishing. I truly think that when people like Jacob Rees-Mogg started talking about fish being happier because they were in British waters, you realise that as a country we had taken collective leave of our senses. And there will be some obvious answers to this second question, but that's why I want you to think about it. I don't mind if the answers are obvious. I want to get as many as I can on the table. Why? Why did it assume this epic importance and then disappear almost overnight? Why was it such an effective weapon for people who have turned out to be either liars or idiots? Or that's not fair. Liars or idiots or both. Why was the fishing industry such an effective tool for all those tools? 0345 6060 973. Have a think, seriously. I mean, you can be fairly confident that none of them are happy with how things have turned out. We don't fully understand what has gone wrong or why. So that is question number one, 0345 6060 973. But we may live in a bonkers country. It may continue to be bonkers. There's something else going on today that I think will help you understand why Keir Starmer adopts the approach to matters EU that he adopts, and I don't like the approach, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to understand it. Why did an issue that felt like the most important issue in the piece disappear almost entirely? And of course, to answer that question, we need to understand why it was such an incredibly effective lever, why it was such an effective wedge. And that I really want to stress the two facets, the two sides of this question, because the more important we remember it was, the madder it seems that it disappeared almost immediately. You couldn't move in some fishing towns for camera crews. You could barely moor a boat at a quay because the BBC had beaten you to it. Sky News would be over there and ITV would be there. You'd have newspaper journalists and radio journalists sticking their microphones in the mouths of every fisherman they could find. They'd be in the pubs going, "Excuse me, sir, have you ever been fishing? Could I ask you about Brexit?" Brexit and fishing went together like a horse and carriage, like Morecambe and Wise. And then suddenly it seems, doesn't it? I've never clocked this before until I saw the front page of the Financial Times today, which contained the words Brussels, Brexit and fishing. And I had this sort of weird flashback to when you could barely open a newspaper without seeing the words Brussels, Brexit and fishing in front of you. So how did it go from being one of the biggest stories in town to being absolutely ignored? 0345 6060 973. And of course, contingent upon that is the question of why it was such an effective weapon for the various weapons that told you Brexit would be brilliant for fishing. I don't even know if we can ask why we all fell for it. Did you fall for it? It's so strange, right? Anyway, that is your starter for 10 this morning. Coming up at 11, well, I'm not quite sure yet, but Mystery Hour will be with us at 12. So there's plenty of opportunity for fun and frolics. But I find this question absolutely incredible. It was the mother of all controversial topics. It was the mother of all Brexit benefits. And then suddenly we never talked about it again. And I'm guilty of that. I don't even know why. But I'm in no doubt that you will have some thoughts. And you will share them with me now by dialing 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 21 minutes after 10. If you think that fishing, Brexit and Brussels is a little bit déjà vu, there's also some footage that has emerged, some audio. An audio clip has emerged in which the current Shadow Home Secretary is heard saying that the Tories didn't have a plan for handling asylum seekers after Brexit. You couldn't make it up, could you? I may play that to you later in the programme if you are very, very good. But we're here in a really strange place. Pete Foster of the Financial Times will join us just after 10:30 to talk us through some of the detail of this deal that is set to be struck on Monday. It would add the EU to the Indian and the US so-called trade deals. One, I think, deserves the title. One probably doesn't. And yet, it's served to me as a reminder of nothing more than the fact that we used to talk about fishing all the time. Nobody more so than the prominent Brexiters. Farage probably more than anybody. And then suddenly they never talked about it again. Explain that to me. Richard's in Bristol. Richard, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. My first time on here.
Well,
I've got friends who fish in Cornwall, and I remember when Brexit was being sort of sold.
They weighed the vote. They weighed the Brexit vote in Cornwall, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were getting more money than anywhere else in Great Britain, and
no one knew.
And then voted to leave. It was like I was like sitting there going, "What the hell?"
Yes.
But they on the back of it, they were on the back of the lie that our waters would become ours again, and that the Cornish fishermen would not have any input from Spain or anywhere else. And I was trying to say to them at the time, Your part of the gross domestic product of this country is like 0.002,
right.
Whereas to the rest of Europe, it's quite an important part of what they do and what they need. And so they were always going to be used, if you like, as a bargaining tool to gain what our government really wanted through Brexit and Farage really wanted, which was the financial industries and the sort of high-tech things, and they could use it as a bargaining tool, and they had done that pretty bloody poorly as well, to be fair. So
it's lose all round. Why was it so effective though? Because I can understand why. If I had a trawler in Truro, then all of this would actually make quite a lot of sense. I understand why you've tickled my toes and why I've fallen for your kind of exaggerations and embellishments. But if I'm driving a minicab in Manchester, why am I suddenly persuaded that fishing is such a big deal and that we need to leave the European Union to protect it?
Like you've said, with the underlying sarcasm, they didn't. Most people in Cornwall, Manchester, whatever, driving minicabs didn't vote because of fishing. They voted because of racism.
Oh, come on! It was a huge issue. It was never out of the papers.
It was made into a huge issue.
But why did it work? How were they able to do that? Why was it such an effective tactic?
The underlying feeling throughout the country was always, and it still is, especially of an ageing population.
Yes.
That the sort of inherent racism, although they wouldn't see it as racism because of their generation, they didn't want. I remember two elderly ladies being interviewed in somewhere like Truro, and it was, why did you leave? Why did you vote to leave? And they said, well, we don't want them Somalians coming in, do we? And it was.
I remember these.
They can say, it gave our fishing rights back, but underlying it,
I hadn't actually thought of this. I know I sometimes pat myself on the back for knowing everything about this issue, but you think that people used fishing as cover? They used it as camouflage.
Absolutely, yeah. The people don't want to be known as racist. They don't want to be known as their.
No, I'm actually going to disagree with you on this. I think two things can be true at the same time. Obviously, immigration was a huge driver of the Brexit vote, whether it was the sort of unpleasant face of scepticism, as you've just described it, or as you've just reminded us, something that we see a lot still, or whether it was, quotes, legitimate concerns, end quotes. I think fishing achieved something different from just mere cover. Sovereignty would be a good example of cover or camouflage, something people didn't have a clue about, but pretended they felt passionately about as the reality began to settle. But fishing, I genuinely believe people truly cared about it. I think it spoke to something in the souls of voters that allowed them to be easily manipulated. And I just want to pin down precisely what it was. Something to do with being an island nation, or something to do with the sense that another tribe is taking away what is rightfully ours. But none of that answers the question of how it disappeared so completely from the agenda in the immediate aftermath of success. And I use that word very, very, very loosely. Richard, thank you. Steve's in Selby in South Yorkshire. Steve, what would you like to say?
It's North Yorkshire, James, just to correct you, but there you go.
I do apologise. Where did I say something? Okay. That's an outrageous slur. Sorry, carry on, Steve.
The whole fishing saga was a classic of the misinformation that was used to sell Brexit. So the things that weren't stated pre-Brexit were that pre-Brexit, 2/3 of UK fishing quotas had been accumulated into the hands of a very few wealthy individuals. Half of those fishing quotas had been sold to foreign fishing vessels.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. And then we get to post-Brexit, and suddenly we realise, the fish that we like to eat in the UK, cod, haddock, etc., we can't catch those in UK fishing waters, so we're going to have to import them from Europe. And the fish we do catch in UK fishing waters, mainly shellfish, well, we don't really like to eat those. We used to export them hugely to places like Spain, live, but suddenly because of Brexit, we can't do that.
I'm getting more flashbacks to some of the people we spoke to who were in the industry and who were having their livelihoods absolutely decimated, which I suppose is part of the answer as to why everybody suddenly stopped talking about it, because all of the people who sold it saw the reality of what they'd ushered in and just thought, oh, crikey, we better shut up now and hope that nobody notices.
Absolutely. So the UK fishing industry virtually disappeared because, as I say, we have to import the fish we like from Europe, and we want to export the fish that we can catch into Europe, but suddenly we can't anymore because of all the regulations.
It is the absolute mothership of misinformation. You're right, because as you speak, I've got little nuggets of memory coming back to me, none of which actually addresses the question of why it worked so effectively. Why was it something that actually did? So this is where I disagreed with Richard in Bristol. I don't think people were just reaching for it willy-nilly to cover up the fact that they just hated immigration. I genuinely think people felt that fish, British fish, was an issue, and yet even the most cursory understanding of the industry would have made it clear that it shouldn't be. So how did it work? Why was it such an effective drug on voters?
Because it's that classic misinformation driven by the right-wing pro-Brexit media, isn't it? And they just kept driving it.
They did, yeah. And then they went silent.
People take it in.
And they went silent almost straight away.
Yes, because it became absolutely clear once Brexit had happened that it was misinformation, and that they have directly caused the collapse of the British fishing industry.
Yes, and that is another reason why they'd go silent for it. Here is the $1 million question, then, Steve.
Yeah.
Because this is, I think, the second part of today's conversation, where we begin to unravel perhaps why Starmer is taking such a timid approach to trying to restore some of the previous status quo. The front page of the Financial Times, and we'll speak to one of the journalists who wrote it in a moment. Post-Brexit reset, talks with Brussels, stall over fishing and youth mobility. I opened the Daily Mail earlier and I saw Kemi Badenoch staring out at me, and I forget precisely what the headline was, but it was an early attempt to kind of re-weaponize this to talk about the concessions or surrender. I want to get the words right because I don't want to misrepresent anybody. But how likely is it that fishing can be re-inflated, if that's a word, that fishing can, once again, the same engines you've talked about, whether it's right-wing media, whether it's the machines of misinformation. Here it is, Kemi, don't make UK a supplicant to European Union. So taking aim at a deal that hasn't been agreed yet, but there it is. How likely is it that fishing, despite knowing what we know, that it could actually, in the hands of bad actors, return to being an incredibly hot political potato?
Well, I'd believe anything, because those bad actors have proved themselves capable of inflating almost anything and getting the British public to buy it when it's such nonsense. It happens time and time again, unfortunately.
And if you were but one of the men responsible for this, one of the men and women responsible for utterly betraying the UK fishing industry, you would welcome nothing more than the opportunity never to talk about it again. Thank you, Steve. It is 10:30. Phone lines are open, 0345 6060 973. It's too close to the news to over-egg this particular pudding, but that's why Starmer's doing what he's doing, isn't he? Because he worries that it would be, as Steve describes it, just too easy for the usual charlatans and spivs, liars and idiots to just revivify the whole fishing red herring. And that is a quality pun. Here's Amelia Cox with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 10:33. Fishing was important, writes Alan, because it involved British waters. It was like a metaphor for British borders and foreign boats invading us. I think you might be right. And yet, of course, everybody went silent about it. Some people knew what was coming, by the way. I forget what job Guy Verhofstadt had at the time, but he gave a speech in Brussels that was particularly pertinent and indeed prescient, a fairly reliable indicator of what was to follow.
Mr. Farage has the whole morning talked about salaries and biggest waste of money. Well, you know, colleagues, what I think is the biggest waste of money in the European Union of today? There's a salary we are paying to Mr. Farage. That is the biggest waste of money. Oh no, Mr. Farage, let's be honest about it. You are member of the Fishery Committee, for example, and you're never there. Never. In 2011, no attendance. In 2012, no attendance. It's fantastic what you're doing. You're coming here saying it's a scandal, the salaries that are being paid, and you pay yourself a salary without doing any labor in your own committee. That's the reality of the European Union today. You want to fix? Well, you can laugh. I hope that maybe this can be sent out on the BBC this evening once, and on all the other private television in Britain, how you in fact cheating your own citizens here. All the time. Already 3 years in a row. And I think it has to finish, because we know that Mr. Alain Lamassoure has rights. This union, if it wants to become a real federal union, needs own resources. Needs, in fact, his own income. And that is the big battle to do now. And we shall do it together, and if it's necessary, without you, Mr. Farage.
Vielen Dank.
Well, they got what they wanted, and the UK fishing industry didn't. I remember naively thinking at the time that people would really care about the fact that he sat on the Fisheries Committee and never turned up. But he understood something that is still evident. Fishing is an incredibly live, or was an incredibly powerful issue, despite the fact that the UK fishing industry ended up getting none of the things that it was promised. One of the journalists responsible for the article I was quoting on the front of the Financial Times this morning under that headline, Post-Brexit Reset Talks with Brussels Stall over Fishing and Youth Mobility, is Peter Foster, the world trade editor of that paper, and he joins me now. It's a little bit deja vu, isn't it, Pete, to see Brexit, Brussels and fishing in not just in a headline but on a front page. Where are we, and what is likely to happen on Monday?
So, James, I think, there are the usual fisticuffs before these summits. There will still be happy families on Monday when Keir Starmer and von der Leyen meet. They will announce a new security partnership between the EU and the UK, non-binding, the same sort of thing that other countries have got, Japan and North Macedonia and others, but nonetheless significant, I think, because it recreates some of the institutional architecture that was ruptured by Brexit. So the Foreign Secretary will meet the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs twice a year. Our civil servants might do exchanges with EU officials, etc. So that bit, all good and fine. And then maybe then a separate negotiation that will allow UK defence companies to take part in something called SAFE, which is a 150 billion euro EU loan facility. We're going to have to pay to play in that. But nonetheless, so that's the defence and security bit. The next bit is the trickier bit, and that's the bit we were reporting on this morning, which is what they're calling a common understanding that will facilitate a set of negotiations that will be familiar to long-time Brexit followers, in which the UK tries to do a veterinary agreement with the EU. So that means getting rid of all those border checks on plant and animal products, which have been a complete nightmare since we left the EU. Trying to do something on mobility, so a youth mobility scheme to allow 18 to 30-year-olds to travel more freely between the EU. That's a big bone of contention because the Starmer government's worried about its migration figures. And then some quite complicated but important stuff, relinking our energy markets, because over the next 10, 20 years, we're going to build a lot of windmills in the North Sea. And that electricity, green electricity, is going to be traded into the European Union and the UK. And important for both sides that the post-Brexit rupture of that trading scheme between the internal energy market of the EU and the UK is reconnected. So those are the three baskets. And
we find ourselves in waters, if you pardon the pun, with which we are quite familiar, although it's been a while since we dipped into them. I should have added that you're also the author of the book, What Went Wrong with Brexit. So you understand better than anyone the tension between observable fact and carefully cultivated political feeling. We may return to the granular detail of what's likely to happen on Monday, but before that, I wonder whether you think this is a balloon that can be reinflated, whether the emotional heft of fishing, which was so effectively manipulated by Farage and Johnson and others, can actually be revivified. I noticed Kemi Badenoch is going to give a speech today in which I think she's going to use the word supplicant. The UK mustn't be a supplicant to the European Union. Again, the facts don't matter. She's very much appealing to a certain kind of feeling. I know you've been busy this morning, but we've been chronicling the fact that it disappeared from the news almost overnight, the fishing industry, having sometimes felt like the only story in town. And that speaks directly of its emotional relationship with the population. Do you reckon that could be resurrected by Brexiters, or that it is now a kind of dead duck?
I don't know, James. I think the truth is about this whole reset, right, is that it's not a mega deal, right? Keir Starmer, right from the outset, said he was going to tear down the barriers to trade with Europe, but he was going to stick to the same things that created the barriers, which was no single market membership and no customs union with the EU. So what you're going to see is a lot of noise from the Brexiteers saying, it's betrayal, it's terrible, we're selling out our sovereignty, when actually the settlement of Boris Johnson and David Frost is largely being honoured, is the truth, right? Yeah. And that will be not good for our businesses that want to trade more with Europe. And by the same token, the Labour government is going to try and big up its reset with Europe, partly to sort of make friends again with the European capitals and with the European Commission and Brussels, but also to try and mollify the kind of pro-Remain forces in the Labour Party to kind of convince them that they're doing a big deal. The truth is, it's not a mega deal in terms of, will it make a massive difference to people's decisions to invest in this country? Will it make a massive difference to the people who move things and make things? Actually, not really. But I do think, to your original question, could there be a load of political noise about it? Yes, because, that betrayal narrative is strong, and I don't expect that the organisations peddling that betrayal narrative will do much in the way of sprinkling facts in as they do it.
It's emblematic of everything in a way that they will scream betrayal about something that is incredibly small beer and definitely not betrayal, as you describe it. But since when did facts matter to the kind of individuals and institutions that we are thinking about? And this, I think, makes it easier to understand why Starmer is doing what he's doing, because if you're going to get the betrayal narrative punted furiously, and it'll be interesting to see how furiously it is punted, of course, but the danger of it being punted furiously over something as relatively low level as what is likely to be announced on Monday, then just imagine what would happen if he were to have done something significant.
But James, there's a counter thought to that, which is that if if the portrayal narrative was going to happen, whatever, so let's say he does a youth mobility deal and it's capped at 5,000, all the rest of it, it's going to be called a return to free movement by the pro-Brexit press. Yes, so if Keir Starmer was going to be howled at by the right over his Brexit reset, arguably he might as well have got something substantive for it. The problem is that because of that Ming Vase election campaign, because they were so desperate not to upset anybody in the election campaign, because actually, whilst Boris Johnson and David Frost were doing a deal which was materially bad for the UK economy, the blue team was making us poorer, but the red team was never there saying they're making us poorer. Yeah. So there's no narrative really of substantive re-engagement with Europe. And so actually the danger for Keir Starmer, I think, is he gets whacked over the head with the betrayal narrative and then doesn't get an awful lot for his trouble.
That's absolutely fascinating. What would you do? I know that's a very leading question, but I mean, you might as well in for a penny, in for a pound. You're going to get a kicking for securing something relatively innocuous. You're going to get the kicking if you secure something significant. So why not go for something significant?
Well, and again, that is about, do you rejoin the customs union?
I love that question.
Do you make the argument to the public that actually we want our young people going back and forth. We want easier professional mobility. So we want European companies to bring their employees over here and us to go over there, because that's the way, large car companies and chemical companies, that's where the modern economy works. We want to be integrated in European supply chains. Brexit was never about making it impossible to make electric vehicles in this country, which if we're not careful is where we're going to end up. But you've got to make the argument. And I think the problem for this Labour Party is because of the poison of the Brexit debate, they essentially decided to abnegate themselves from that space. And now, frankly, it's a bit late to turn around and try and land a load of arguments that you've never really advanced over the last 3 or 4 years. Political narratives take a long time to get together. And, to your point about Farage and Verhofstadt, say what you like about Farage, he is peddling a political narrative. Oh, yes. You might not like it, but we can all say what the narrative. It's a story, and populists right now seem to be monopolising storytelling in politics, and the progressives need to find a way to tell their own stories in a way that convinces people.
I agree with that. Listen to my story, he says, but just don't mention the one that I was telling a few years ago, because that wouldn't be pretty. Final question: what has actually happened to UK fishing since the settlement agreed by Frost and the rest of them?
So originally the Brits asked for about 80% reduction in EU fishing in our boats. In the end, they got 25%, and that was phased in, a 25% reduction from the EU, phased in, James, over 5 years, up until June 2026. So the row that's going on at the moment is that, in theory, after that June 26 deadline, the UK could have reopened negotiation and got back some more fish for our fishermen. But what the EU is saying is, if you want your veterinary agreement, if you want deeper relations, etc., we want a status quo agreement that guarantees the level of fish that we have now. And what's more, if you're only prepared to give us a 2 or 3 year deal on fish, we'll only give you a 2 or 3 year deal on the veterinary agreement. And that's not much use to the supermarket. So it's a classic sort of haggle. And because, frankly, the UK, because it's been so constrained and hasn't been able to kind of really reset the debate by, say, embracing youth mobility, doing a quick deal on fish, really showing it wants deeper integration, signalling it's interested in rejoining a customs union, we're back to, frankly, those of us who followed it for a long time, a kind of iterative negotiation that is eerily familiar with the ones that we saw in 2017, 2018, 2019.
And still, some people will be subscribing to the idea that they need us more than we need them, even as we enter into these much lower level negotiations than the.
I mean, but one final really important point is that actually, last time, remember, there was a cliff edge. There was a no deal. Yes, the EU didn't want a no deal, whatever they said. And that meant that we went into tunnels and we hastened to get deals together. That dynamic doesn't exist here, right? The EU can perfectly live with a trade and cooperation agreement. Overall, relations are much better with Starmer's government than with previous Tory government. Yes. They're keen on that. But then you get into the nitty-gritty of giving away your fish, giving away your rights to, certify industrial goods, etc. And then you get back in the nitty-gritty.
Pete Foster, thank you. I think you delayed hopping on a train in order to talk to us, for which we are particularly grateful, so much so that I shall plug your book again, What Went Wrong with Brexit, which is one of the best detailed accounts of actually, in a sense, that joke I always make about there is a brilliant Brexit, it just goes to a different school. So the spivs and the charlatans are misrepresenting what was possible and what could have been achieved. But Pete does a bang-up job in that book of outlining what more could realistically have been secured for the United Kingdom, and of course what was not. It's 10:47, and I do recommend the coverage in the Financial Times today as well. Maura, your thoughts up next. It's a bit late in the hour to add that dimension of whether or not you think the poison could still be reactivated in the public bloodstream. Farage will try, others might try. I don't know who else is prominent, really. Badenoch will try, actually. I don't know. Would your mum still fall for it? Would your Uncle Keith's Facebook page still be full of pictures of British fish looking happy? Would people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, if he hadn't been handed his sandwiches wrapped in a roadmap by the good people of Somerset last year, still be claiming some sort of betrayal narrative? Is the Pope a Catholic?
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:51 is the time, and if we're doing déjà vu all over again, then in for a penny, in for a pound. Because a senior Tory admitting privately something that everyone who understood anything knew to be true, but which Tories and Brexiters and various client journalists insisted furiously wasn't true at all. Do you remember those heady days? My inbox would be full of people claiming I didn't know what I was talking about, whereas in fact I was just publicly saying what people who supported Brexit were admitting privately. We could do a roundup of favourite moments. Do you remember Dominic Raab? I'm sorry if you'd managed to forget him. But anyway, I think for me, probably him saying something along the lines of, well, do you know, it turns out, this is someone who would have described themselves as an ardent Brexiter. It turns out we do a lot of trade between Dover and Calais. He said, and do you know when I found that out, he said? When I became Minister for Brexit. And you wonder how everything could have gone so horribly wrong, or why so many people put so much effort into either not talking about it at all or pretending that it hasn't. 10:52 is the time. Wow. Talking of... Oh, well, hang on. There's more déjà vu all over again on the horizon. But first, here is the senior Tory admitting privately the stuff that everybody who understood anything was publicly stating to be true and being shot down in flames for their trouble.
Because we're out of the European Union now, we are out of the Dublin III regulations. And so we can't any longer rely on sending people back to the place where they first claimed asylum. When we did check it out, just before we exited the EU transitional arrangements on December the 31st, 2020, we did run some checks and found that about half the people crossing the Channel had claimed asylum previously elsewhere in Europe, in Germany, France, Italy, Spain, somewhere like that, and therefore could have been returned. But now we're out of Dublin, we can't do that, and that's why we need to have somewhere like Rwanda that we can send these people to as a deterrent.
They didn't actually use the Dublin Convention as much as you might think from listening to that clip. But again, I mean, how a country could be so successfully groomed and gaslit into believing things that even they knew were nonsense privately, but would publicly be insisting otherwise. The simple fact that Brexit made it harder, if you care about deporting asylum seekers, Brexit made it much harder to do so. But hey-ho, even Keir Starmer never raises that point for the reasons that Pete touched on in the last call, this almost addictive timidity that he seems to suffer from, except when it comes to upsetting people who weren't born here. Robin is in Newlyn in Cornwall, and it is another dose of déjà vu, because Robin not only works as a consultant in the fishing industry, but was one of my go-to experts when we were trying to wade through the weeds of everything that was likely to happen, and largely Robin now has. What made you pick up the phone today?
Good morning, James. Actually, it was a load of people contacted me to say you need to listen to James this morning. He's talking about fishing before I go to France this evening. So I said, yeah, I will.
Well, thank you very much. Obviously, you're smuggling into the conversation the fact that you didn't have me on anyway, but 1.4 million people a week do, as we discovered this morning, so I'll let you off on this occasion, Robin.
Absolutely. I was packing.
Oh, very good. Where are we? What's going on?
Right. Well, what's going on is that actually it involves all of Brexit as a whole entity, because basically since the dreaded Brexit came into force, the fishing industry has been forced to import working people from places such as Uganda, from the Philippines, etc., to pick crab, to go fishing on boats, etc., basically because the Eastern Europeans that we used to employ here were made to go back by the Brexit Convention itself and the agreement.
And that's one element of it. So
Yes.
that again is a reflection of the bigger picture. It's seen immigration from areas much further away for much less mobile people, and in some cases more likely to bring dependents with them. What has it done in the context of the promises made by the likes of Farage and Johnson in terms of the British fishing industry emerging healthier, bigger and stronger from the negotiations than it went into them?
Can I reflect on my good old friend, Mr. Rees-Mogg,
Of course.
who publicly lied to me on the radio when I spoke to him on your, I can't remember the guy's name, who does the announcing first thing in the morning for you.
Yeah, nor can I.
Yeah, so there we go. But he brought Jacob Rees-Mogg on, and they rang me, and I spoke to him. And he lied completely about the pollution that's going into inshore waters from our rivers, etc., so care of our water companies, which directly affects the water quality of being A, B, or C. C, shellfish unharvestable. B, harvestable but needing to be decorated before going to the continent. And A, obviously clean water and can go. We have virtually no A-grade waters left in the UK. So everything has to be decorated, which causes increased mortality to those fish and shellfish, and also causes major expense increases.
And this is very much your field, particularly the shellfish side of the industry. We speak, of course, of the great Nick Ferrari. I was being disingenuous, but also, briefly, as an aside, before we go on to the final question, do you think Rees-Mogg was lying, or do you think he just didn't know what he was talking about? Because it's always been very, very hard to know the difference.
Absolutely. For somebody who's supposed to be in a position of power and actually preaches to people and down to people, if he doesn't know what he's talking about, then basically he should go away.
Well, he kind of has, but I suspect he'll be back.
And then some other form of radio.
What do we know about what is now likely to happen on Monday? It looks like a realignment, and I think you probably saw that as being inevitable. Have I got that right?
Yes, I did see it. Well, I do see the whole thing as being inevitable, being realigned in one way, shape or form. How they negotiate this alongside all changes in basically the alignment that we used to have with the EU as far as food regulations and SPS food regulations go. It depends how far we've moved away and what agreements we made with other countries to import their food into our country that can be packaged or processed here and then re-exported to the EU. An example is the US deal that's on the table now, I believe, is about chlorinated chicken and about beef that's been enhanced by all sorts of drug and influences to make it grow faster. The EU does not want that into their country. So if they align with us on SPS agreements, how on earth are they going to trace it?
My information is that isn't on the table in the US trade deal, but that involves trusting Donald Trump. I mean, because I looked into it last week when it was announced, and that is one of the areas where they haven't given an inch, presumably because they're cognizant of what you've just described.
Absolutely.
Trying to, I suppose, in a sense, trying to not have their cake and eat it, but trying to keep both plates spinning. So
sat on the fence.
Yeah, well, yes, and left with little choice but to do that, of course, because for political reasons they can't suddenly announce that they're undoing the whole thing. Final question: why do you think all of the people that used the fishing industry mercilessly as a weapon with which to beat the electorate over the head of the necessity to leave the European Union went so immediately silent on the subject?
Basically, because we are an island race, and it is something that is quite emotive with us being surrounded by sea. The big thing about the fishing industry is that most people have not a clue what happens in the fishing industry and how it works. So therefore, it's a very easy thing to, tell a half-truth, which then becomes a headline and then therefore becomes the whole truth until somebody disproves it.
And even when somebody like you comes along to disprove it, of course, the voices of half-truths and lies remain ever louder, largely, of course, thanks to client journalists and incredibly biased, even bent media. Thank you, Robin. That was a characteristically adroit précis, and bon voyage. I wish you well on your trip to France. It is coming up to 11 o'clock. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Up next, we return to one of my new favourite topics. Can you guess what it is? One of the subjects that I enjoy talking about, which I don't think we talked about at all 12 months ago. It's become a bit of a new favourite. But I've also got a little quiz for you. Of the 42, just harking back to that Guy Verhofstadt clip that you heard where he was describing Nigel Farage's commitment to the UK fishing industry, something of which none of us can be in any doubt. Of the 42 meetings he could have attended as a member of that committee when he was a member of European Parliament, how many do you think he attended? Was it A, 21? Was it B, 31? Or was it C, 1? So there were 42 meetings he could have attended as a member of the Committee on Fishing in the European Union when he was a member of the European Parliament, a period of his life when he never shut up about how passionately he cared about the British fishing industry. How many of that 42 possible meetings do you think he attended? Was it A, 21, B, 31, or C, 1? It's 11 o'clock.
James O'Brien on LBC.
4 minutes after 11 is the time, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I didn't give you the answer to yesterday's quiz. You're absolutely right. I don't know why you still expect anything from me at all, to be honest with you. Yesterday's was a really good one, actually. I asked you I've probably forgotten what the three choices were. I asked you what the Saudis had given to Donald Trump. Was it A, a golden tap in his hotel room would dispense unlimited amounts of Diet Coke? Was it B, a portable branch of McDonald's that would follow him around wherever he went and allow him to eat as many cheeseburgers or indeed Big Macs or quarter pounders as he pleased? Or was it C, an even bigger and more vulgar plane than he'd been bought by the Hamas-supporting Qatari administration? Interesting that people are more concerned with Gary Lineker's Instagram account than they are by the fact that their hero in the White House is now accepting incredibly opulent gifts, or desperate to accept incredibly opulent gifts from an administration widely perceived as being supportive of Hamas and definitely guilty of sheltering some of its most senior members. But hey-ho, that's what happens when you sell your soul. You abandon any relationship with morality or integrity. And the answer, of course, was B. It was the portable McDonald's. And the answer to today's is C. Nigel Farage, out of the 42 committee meetings he could have attended as a member of the relevant committee in the European Parliament on fishing, the fishing industry, something he professed to care passionately about, out of the 42 meetings he could have attended, he attended 1. I'm less bored than I was at 10 o'clock. Bored isn't quite the right word. What is the right word? Battered? That's another fish pun for you. The idea that the return of words like Brexit, Brussels and fishing to the front page of the Financial Times is a little bit disheartening, dispiriting. You'd have thought, given it is over the years one of my favourite subjects, you'd have thought that it would be something that I relished, but oddly I don't. I don't know why, but I feel more up for it now than I did in at 10 o'clock this morning. We move next to one of the stories that has become one of my new favourites. I've got a brilliant missed information for you this hour as well. It's an absolute humdinger. Daily Mail, perhaps inevitably, have gone with the headline, Lamy refused to pay £590 taxi fare after he was driven from Italy to the French Alps. The bulk of that headline being in quotes for reasons that will become incredibly clear. It's probably my favourite missed information of the last few weeks, and almost certainly one that I will actually remember to share with you before 12 noon today. But before that, the subject that has become one of my recent favourites is so-called weight loss jabs. And I don't know if you saw the story earlier this week where it was claimed that they are quite possibly going to be able to work borderline miracles in all sorts of other areas as well. They could delay diseases associated with aging, halve deaths from heart attacks. A new golden age of medicine being ushered in, according to some experts, because the drugs have been found to target the underlying biology of chronic illnesses, meaning that they could be given to millions of people to help them live longer, even if they are not obese. And that's not even the story that I wanted to draw to your attention first this morning. That is a story all about how people who take weight loss jabs pile the pounds back on with 10 months after they stop using them. And this was our big fear, wasn't it? So there's two stories here. One is a story of almost unbelievable optimism, and one is quite a pessimistic story. And I suspect they might both be true. Because we have quite a... I don't know if this is Protestantism. I hear that word. I see that word used sometimes in various contexts, and I've never been entirely sure what it means. It's a sort of form of self-denial. The extremities of Protestantism would be Puritanism, right? And that idea that we deny ourselves pleasures. It's not like the sort of Opus Dei self-flagellating yourself or wearing a hair shirt, which is actually more likely to occur in Catholicism. But something, when I see Protestantism being used in a non-religious way to describe attitudes and behaviours, the Anglo-Saxon Protestant ethic would be that we don't deserve pleasures. You know, Oliver Cromwell, you deny yourself the pleasures of the flesh, not just the sexy stuff, but, you know, the food and the booze, and you deny yourself things. And I, with a lot of things that are, if you like, national characteristics, I think we probably suffer from it without knowing. So I have suggested to you over the last 12 months or so, I've shared with you that I have misgivings about the fat loss drugs, the weight loss drugs. I have weird misgivings about them. And I think it's because of the Anglo-Saxon Protestant ethic. I think my weird misgivings about weight loss jabs come from the fact that they feel like cheating. And that is absolutely ridiculous. If I had cancer, do you think I'd complain that chemotherapy felt like cheating? Or if I was suffering from a broken leg, would I eschew crutches and a plaster of Paris because it would somehow feel like cheating and I should be using the power of my own personality and or prayer to restore my physical prowess? It's such a weird thing, and it speaks directly to our relationship with weight. Health, actually, not just weight. The idea that being healthy should involve pain. The idea that actually it's not, it goes beyond health, doesn't it, this? If you had to sum up what on earth it is I'm trying to jabber on about at the moment when I use this phrase, Anglo-Saxon Protestant work ethic, I think it means that everything that is good should hurt. Everything that is morally good should hurt. Everything that is Epicureanly good. No, I need a better word than that. I just invented that one. Everything that is pleasurable is bad. So, you know, rich food, alcohol, sexy times. Everything that is pleasurable is bad. Everything that is morally good is hard and tough. So easy equals bad. The easy choice is the bad choice. Oh, it's easy to do that. It's, I suppose, something we touch on a little bit in the context of journalism, that the morally bad journalism is the easiest journalism to do. Down with single mothers, down with Gary Lineker, down with unemployed people, down with immigrants, down with asylum seekers, down with all of them. The morally valuable journalism is much harder. What are the facts? I've got to find them out. I've got to do it. No pain, no gain, in a way. And then on the other side of it, and I think I must be guilty of this, I've never noticed before, self-restraint is good. Moral rectitude involves physical or mental pain. Denying yourself things. I suppose we do it in Lent, don't we? We Catholics. It's a tribute to God to deny yourself something pleasurable. Why? What's God going to care about how much chocolate you eat in April? But anyway, that's not a phone-in question. It might be one for Mystery Hour. So I've had these weird misgivings about the weight loss jabs. And I recognise fully how ridiculous they are. I quite like the cancer chemotherapy point. You know, you obviously are not going to see obesity in the same light quite that you see cancer, but it still works as a metaphor. It still works. And then you learn that actually, because the jabs don't involve any self-restraint, for a lot of people, when they stop using the jabs, the behavioural strategies return. The behaviour returns. This was presented at the European Congress on Obesity. Extra points today to anyone who can tell me where the European Congress on Obesity was held this year. Malaga. That's a nice surprise. I suppose they've got lots of hotels, so when it's off-season, there'll be good places to do conferences. So anyway, at the European Congress on Obesity, they shared research looking at 6,370 adults across 11 studies. And they found that either, I mean, it's quite a leap, this. Either people have to accept that this is a treatment for life, that you're going to have to keep doing it going forward, or we need to come up with better tactics on helping people keep the benefits when they stop taking the drug. Now, when you consider that the government is currently considering plans to give untold numbers of people these drugs, because if you can reduce their weight, then you massively reduce the likelihood on paper of them getting conditions, all sorts of life-threatening and health-limiting conditions. But when you stop taking them, weight gain is much faster than when people stop diets, according to a researcher that led the well, unfortunately, I now have to say research because I can't think of a better word, according to the researcher who led the research. And listen, I know I don't need to tell you this, but occasionally it's worth a quick reminder. Just because you've kept the weight off doesn't mean the research is wrong. You know, any more than just because you've never had a cold doesn't mean that colds don't exist, or just because you've never had polio doesn't mean that polio doesn't exist. I don't want to sound patronising, but sometimes I do have to wade through a couple of people who think that the research must be wrong because it doesn't tally exactly with their own experience. Of the 6,370 adults across 11 studies used in this research, some of them will have kept the weight off. They will be the ones that have actually successfully completely changed their behaviour. Diets, it is suggested, are more difficult than jabs. So even though diets are notoriously yo-yo-like, they actually see people keep the weight off for longer or put it back on more slowly afterwards, because the argument is they've learnt the powers of self-restraint. I like that. Fred suggests other notorious cheats include spectacles, crutches, hair plugs, hearing aids, makeup and calculators. He writes, quite poetically, the truly virtuous stumble half blind and half deaf through life, bald, barefaced and counting on their fingers. But you would have that. I reckon a full-on Puritan would have problems with some of those things because they're not organic or natural or God-made. You would, wouldn't you? In some of the sort of weird religious communities in the United States of America, you would have people who felt that spectacles were heretical because it involves somehow challenging God's will. Anyway, let's not necessarily go down that rabbit hole at the moment. Let's instead look at the question of what this actually means. Whether the simple fact that these drugs will deliver miraculous weight loss, but only while you are taking them. I know an awful lot of people listening to this have taken them, have worked with them, and have enjoyed enormous success, but they've been around for long enough now for us to do Chapter 2. What are the topics recently, in the last couple of years, that we have both discovered and explored together to a point where the stories start to change? AI is the other obvious one. When we started talking about AI, it could barely write a limerick. Now it could write War and Peace. And we need to return to that soon, actually, and find out what we're supposed to be scared of this week. But on the weight loss drugs, we've gone from not really knowing anything about them because they were so new to now knowing almost more every month, it feels like. If you are taking them, you've now been doing it for night. We will now have people listening who have taken them and taken them off and then not taken them. And I want to examine two things. The first is, what works? What changes should you be making while you... I mean, actually, no, it's not even that, is it? Is this a really big moment? Because actually, for all the worthy talk of having to change your habits and changing your behaviour while you're on it, and all the hopes we've pinned on that, is it actually the case that unless you're prepared to keep doing the jabs for the rest of your natural, then you're going to go back to your old ways and your old weight pretty much overnight when you stop? 0345 6060 973. If you want to come at this from the angle of the Anglo-Saxon Protestant work ethic, then you are very, very welcome to do so. But given that I can't properly articulate the question I want to ask, you can be entirely forgiven for not coming up with an answer to it. 18 minutes after 11 is the time. Does this mean that they were too good to be true all along? And go on then. And why does that speak to this sense that they were cheating in the first place? Hit the numbers now. You will get through.
James O'Brien on LBC.
20 minutes after 11. Can a Catholic have a Protestant work ethic? Asks Scott. And then adds, great show. I think if you saw that message in the wild, you'd think that the two things couldn't possibly be linked to each other. You can't be asking a question, can a Catholic have a Protestant work ethic, and also be presenting a great show? But somehow we manage it together. Does this mean that it's all too good to be true? Megan's in Lewisham. Megan, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Yeah, yes, I do think they're too good to be true, but not for the reasons I think that maybe you're saying.
Go on.
So I took one of them a few years ago, and that was before I realised I was suffering with food addiction. I've since realised that, and I've started to address the dealing with the food addiction side of it. I am now taking it again, but whilst doing all the things dealing with the food addiction side.
Okay.
And I think the reason why they're too good to be true is because food isn't really looked at as an addiction by most of society, by most, doctors, by just our whole, way of thinking. Whereas actually, if you looked at it the same way you looked at, how a lot of people look at drug and alcohol addiction, you'd realise that you can't just take the substance away. You have to be changing its behaviours, but it's not just behaviours, it's what's going on beneath the behaviours. What is that trying to fix? So most time what you're trying to fix by taking a substance is to not feel an emotion. And if you're not learning how to deal and turn up with your emotions, you're always going to revert back to that substance.
I wonder if addiction is most things are on a scale, aren't they? They're on a graph. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't use the word addiction until we were quite far up that graph, but the same principles would apply. So let me read you what Jane Ogden said. She's a professor of health psychology at Surrey University. She says and she's not going to be talking, this is my point, about people who are likely to achieve a sort of a diagnostic threshold to describe addiction, but anybody could fit this picture. There's no point just throwing people back out into the world of their own lives after they stop taking the jabs. They're going to need psychological counselling, behaviour change and nutritional support from that moment on to help them sustain healthier behaviour and keep the weight off. And the further up the graph towards actual addiction you are, the more true that will be.
100%. And Dr. Gabor Mate describes addiction as just being a behaviour that you cannot stop despite it having bad consequences for you. So yes, there's a scale on, how often you'll do the addictive action, but the actual addiction itself is quite a minimal kind of level that you have to reach.
Yeah. No, so you're having another go with all the other things in place as well.
Yeah, so I started putting all them other things in place before the other go. It's more like with weight, it's a tough one because obviously once you've got the weight, you have to then, you don't have to lose it, but if you want to lose it, you have to lose it. So you have to be in a calorie deficit. So I'm using the jabs as a calorie deficit,
right? But
I'm dealing with why I want to eat and what comes up for me around that in a lot more like holistic. For me, it's God-centered. It doesn't have to be that for everyone, but
God-centered.
Yeah, so a lot of the addiction programs will focus on having
steps.
a higher power.
Yes, of course. I weird that because I brought God into it for completely different reasons at the top of the hour. Well, good luck. I never know quite what to say in these circumstances. If I say good for you, it sounds like I'm a sort of dreadful mother on the sidelines at a prep school sporting event or something like that. But I really do wish you all the very best. I really do, because I do have some inkling of how hard it is and what a big deal it can be for people as well. And so there it is, that sense that perhaps, listen, it's not a question of calling the whole thing off. But was it too good to be true? Yeah, I think it might be. These experiences and this research suggests perhaps it was. I quite like this from Bev. I think about this in terms of ADHD, which I have and take medication for. The impulses and abilities to function in specific ways are only enhanced for the 4 hours that my medication works. But that allows me to function in the world in a way that I can cope and feel happy and able. If weight loss drugs help people with suppressing their impulses to eat, for example, how is that wrong? If it helps people live a life where they feel happier and more themselves, well, there's a defense of taking it forever. But, of course, we don't know what that might mean in the long term, or at least we don't have fully clear pictures yet of what that might mean in the long term. So, I mean, I take your point intellectually, but neither of us are qualified to properly absorb it medically or chemically. Jan is in Ivy Bridge. Jan, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning, James.
Hello.
Well, I'm coming at this from some strange angles in a way. I've been using weight loss injections for the past maybe 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I started out on the Ozempic and Wegovy plan.
Yes.
I switched to the Wegovy because it was the second thing that came out that was supposed to be slightly more effective than Ozempic. So I switched to that.
Yeah.
And over the course of the time that I was using it, which was about 14 or 15 months, I lost over 4 stone in weight.
Gosh.
I am severely overweight. And that isn't helped by the fact that I suffer from arthritis quite badly. I'm 64, but I've been suffering from arthritis since I was about 50. I've had hip replacements, and I'm about to have a shoulder replacement. Both my knees are finished.
Gosh.
So
You're going to be bionic, aren't you, by next Christmas?
Yeah. Funnily enough, my daughters think there won't be much left of me if I decide to be cremated.
Good Lord, there's a cheerful thought.
Be left to spread
I think you should disinherit them for that kind of comedy.
Anyway, I needed to lose the weight mainly because of my health conditions.
Yes.
I'm also borderline diabetic, or I was until I started on Wegovy. I'm way under the borderline now. So it has reversed that for me as well. But then I stopped the Wegovy about 12, maybe 15 months ago because I thought, well, I've lost a great deal of weight. I could probably keep it off, and I'm a little bit more active, so, that might help. And I put all the weight back on within about 8 months. So, but my issue, so I've now started on the Mounjaro route. And I've lost quite a bit of weight. In fact, I've lost nearly all of it again.
Okay.
But the reason I lose weight is because it stops the food noise. The injections stop me thinking about food. In fact, so much so that some days I forget to eat. I have to force myself to go and cook something to eat. So that's how I'm losing weight, because I basically only eat once a day.
But doesn't that add to the sense that it's too good to be true, though? Because when you stop taking Mounjaro, then the food noise will come back.
Yes,
again.
It does. It's all this noise of food, and for me, it stems back a long time. I mean, I started in childhood with anorexia, believe it or not, and throughout most of my life until I was about 30. I think I suffered with anorexia on and off.
Right.
And then I just relaxed and thought, well, I could eat food just as well as not eat it. And that's what I started to do. And that's when I started to gain the weight.
So you need support in different areas to keep it off. And at the moment...
at 64, there was no support for me as a child with anorexia.
Oh, of course.
So I think I have come to the conclusion, because I've worked a lot of things out for myself and I've also had some therapy, I think I'm going to be living with an eating disorder for all of my life.
Okay.
Sometimes it's noisy and sometimes it leaves me alone. It depends how my life is going at the time.
Yes.
But I think I'm going to live with an eating disorder for all my life, really. Now, because I'm not so active, my appetite isn't as big. But because I'm disabled, that makes it hard for me to eat virtually anything really without gaining weight, because I just don't have the ability to move around.
So what we're describing then is a suboptimal situation that is made better by something that is not actually a miracle.
Yes.
I like that. That's an important contribution, because
I'm going to need it
I'm being
forever.
A bit tabloid, aren't I, really? I want it to be either angel or devil. I want it to be 100% brilliant or 100% awful. And of course, life's not like that. This is not.
Yes.
This isn't.
I think some people may well be able to sort their lives out and their dietary.
They categorically are. I've spoken to them, but of course, it's such early days that just because they were okay last month doesn't mean they'll be okay next month, or just because they were okay last year doesn't mean.
I think underneath it all, we all have this underlying emotional issue that we don't all address.
Yes, of course.
I've been lucky enough that I've been able to do that. So I do understand why I do these things, but that doesn't necessarily mean I make the choice to stop them.
No, it helps. It's a start, isn't it, when you begin to understand why you do the things that you do. I'm sure you've come across this phrase before, but the thing that trauma does is the body keeps the score. So you may well know what it is that has hurt you or what it is that has caused you to pursue bad behaviours, but that is only a small part of the process of stopping yourself from doing those. What a wonderful call, Jan. Thank you. And good luck with the imminent operations as well. It's 31 minutes after 11. Mystery hour on the horizon, but also, of course, my favourite missed information in weeks. It is a masterpiece of the genre. Missed information is about how the media tells you a story in a way that is very deliberately designed to tell you something that's not true, while ostensibly telling you something that is. Amelia Cox has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 11:34. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Shall I start doing them as soon as I come back? You know, if we ever fix this, it's going to close down one of our most amusing areas of conversation, the so-called hook and tease, the things I do to make sure that you don't go off and do something less boring instead. During the hiatus or the junction or the thing that we never ever call an advertiser, during the news even on that occasion. So before the news I say, I've got a wonderful missed information for you. So you go, I'll just postpone, I'll just cross my legs, I won't go to the toilet just yet, I'll stay there so that I can hear this wonderful missed information when I come back. And then I forget. And you get cross with me and you send me messages at like 1 minute to 1 and they say things like, what about the McDonald's story? And I go, oops, sorry. And I think I must quickly mention that before I go. And then, it's all over and Sheila's here and I've completely forgotten. So maybe if I start trying to do them as soon as I come back from the junction, it will be better. Do you think? I'll be less likely to forget? I hope.
Missed information.
Thank you, Emily. Lammy, quotes, refused to pay £590 taxi fare after he was driven from Italy to the French Alps. Okay, this is a story about the politician and former LBC presenter David Lammy. Well, you've heard what the Daily Mail has to say. Angry cabbie then drove off with his diplomatic bags in the boot. And my little antennae started twitching because of the very liberal use of quotation marks in the headlines. I thought that's a bit odd. Lammy, quotes, refused to pay £590 taxi fare after he was driven from Italy to the French Alps, end quotes. Reopen quotes, angry cabbie then drove off with his diplomatic bags in the boot, end quotes. So it is a bad story for David Lammy, isn't it? The Foreign Secretary refused to pay his taxi fare, your mum will think, as she reads the Daily Mail over her crumpets in the morning. I never liked that Lammy fella, your Uncle Keith might think, as he splutters over his Mail Online subscription shortly before taking the dog for a walk. It is there. It is there in the headline. He's been reported for alleged violence. He refused to pay his taxi fare. And, okay, now we count the paragraphs. Are you ready for this? Paragraph 1, tick. Paragraph 2, tick. Paragraph 3, tick. Paragraph 4, tick. Paragraph 5, tick. Paragraph 6, tick. Paragraph 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Still quoting the driver. 12, the Daily Mail understands. 13, look, they've got the local prosecutor involved. 14, hang on. 15, paragraph 15 of 17. On a story under the headline, Lammy refused to pay £590 taxi fare after he was driven from Italy to the French Alps. In paragraph 15 of 17, we learn the Frenchman, that's the cabbie, not the Foreign Secretary, the Frenchman is now due in court on November the 3rd to face a charge of fraudulently removing luggage and cash. So David Lammy refused to pay £590 taxi fare after he was driven from Italy to the French Alps is in quotes and is the headline on a 17-paragraph story in which the 15-paragraph reveals, not in quotes, because it's definitely happening. Unlike the stuff that's in quotes, this is definitely happening. The Frenchman, the cabbie, is due in court to face a charge of fraudulently removing luggage and cash. But of course, if you, for reasons, want to portray David Lammy in a bad light, you report the story in the way that the Daily Mail has done today. Even the Daily Telegraph manages to do it honestly. And that is how it works.
Missed information.
15 paragraphs might be a record, James, says Davey. You could be right. And Joe is offering some advice on how to present radio programmes. Please conclude your hook and teasers after the next break. As you just mentioned, James, I'm a delivery driver and I'm in and out of the van all the time, meaning I often miss the conclusion of the missed information or the missing word rounds. It's possible you don't, Joe. It's possible you don't miss the conclusions because I've forgotten to share them. How often does that happen? That probably happens more often than not at the moment. It's something we're working very hard together on. Me, Eleanor and Keith, we've been having some hot head get-togethers, some high-level meetings. We think we've got a strategy. Do you know what the strategy is? It involves writing misspelled words on an enormous screen in front of me. That's the strategy. That's the strategery. That's the strateger. That's the strateger. We're using the auto cue machine in the studio. So if Frin from Andrew Marr, the autocue machine, Frin from Andrew Marr, we've got a stratagem. Jeez. So, sorry, Joe, in Rayleigh. It may well be that you haven't missed the denouement or the punchline or the answer. It may well be that I have blown it. But as you write, and this is crucial, pay attention. All right, strategy, lads. This is strategy time, because he writes, if I know for sure that it will be revealed after the next junction, I can hang around for a few minutes to hear it before getting out and completing my delivery. Right, we're calling it the Joe in Rayleigh strategy. Write that down. It's the Joe in Rayleigh strategy now. We're going to experiment in the coming weeks, days, hours, minutes. We're going to experiment with the Joe in Rayleigh strategy, which is I'll cue something up just before the break, and I'll give you the payoff just after it. And we'll see how that works. How are we going to measure? Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to thank my therapist, my studio engineer, my producer. I don't know how we'll ever measure whether it makes any difference at all, unless you just tell me that it does. But there we are. Okay. Kevin writes, hi, James. I've just tuned in. What's going on? Are you okay? To which, who knows? And Davey says, this is historic, James. That's absolutely right. It is historic. And it is now the Joe in Rayleigh strategy. We are definitely not going to forget to call it that, are we? The Joe in Rayleigh strategy is now in place. If only I had some more to do before Mystery Hour comes around at 12 o'clock today. Back to the big question of the morning, which is whether news that you are likely to, the majority, a significant proportion of people who take weight loss jabs, pile the pounds back on within 10 months after they stop using them. Does this mean we have to completely review our optimism about what these drugs might mean? 0345 6060 973. Ryan is in Harrow. Ryan, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello,
long time listener, first time to speak to you.
Welcome.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So I've been listening for the last half an hour or so whilst I've been driving around for work, and I started taking the Mounjaro weight loss jabs in December. Why? Because I'd reached an all-time high on my weight, which was 102 kilograms. My normal happy weight from when I'm 41, from when I was probably before 30, is around about 80 to 82 kilograms. And slowly from about 32 up to my current age, I just kept gradually gaining weight, even though my eating habits probably hadn't really changed the most. To do with my metabolism and whatnot.
Sure.
I'm an old ex-athlete. I know all about the benefits of training and eating well, but I just couldn't bring myself over the last 2 or 3 years as my weight fluctuated. I couldn't. I've got 2 kids as well, so I manage them. I've got a busy life. I just couldn't motivate myself to do the amount of exercise or restrict myself, as you were mentioning earlier, from drinking and taking all the luxuries. So
what's your pleasure? What's your pleasure?
So cider, Henry Weston's for a start.
Very nice.
Which is very, very calorific. But I like pizzas, burgers, doner meat, all the stuff that I know that is
doner meat. There you go. Go on, carry on.
So I needed to do something, and I've tried lots of different diets and had some medium sort of results, but nothing that was long lasting. I saw a friend of mine who had lost a massive amount of weight, massive transformation over a very short space of time. I was like, wow, what have you done? I was like, well, I've been taking these jabs.
Yeah.
I couldn't recommend them enough. I asked a few questions. I'd been hearing about them all in the news.
Yeah.
So, lo and behold, I go for it. 150 quid a month. I got my jabs. It's 2.5 milligrams, and they give you an injection where you self-inject subcutaneously, and it's 1 jab every week.
Right.
So, I started the jabs in December. 102 kilograms. Within a couple of days, I noticed a huge difference in my appetite, and this is where it really works.
Go on.
So it's clearly blocking the synapses or the communications to tell your brain that you're hungry.
This is the food noises that lots of other callers have talked about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was not feeling hungry. Then once I had, I was eating, after just a few mouthfuls, I would feel full. I would not have the cravings for doner meat, getting up in the night, burgers. I'll go to McDonald's with my 2 young daughters and my partner and be able to resist not having anything, which is a world that I've never really been in before. You put a double cheeseburger in front of me in McDonald's, doesn't matter whether I'm hungry or not. Previously, I would have eaten it.
But how do we know? Because your timing is perfect. How do we know that when you stop taking the jabs, the burgers, the siren call of the cheeseburger will become irresistible once again?
So I'm getting to that. So it was never my
Take
intention.
Your time.
It was never my. I'm sorry, I do go on a bit. It was never my intention to take them long term. I just wanted to get. Drop that initial weight. Because going and exercising at 102 kilograms as well, running, I do roller skating, ice skating, and all the rest of it, and swimming is so much more difficult. But once you get over that first hurdle of the first 5,
yeah, but that's the point, isn't it? So you're going to be one of the people that, touch wood, you are, because you exercise a lot anyway. You're not going to slip into the category that's been described here, because your life, you do have a very healthy lifestyle. You just managed to put on a bit of lumber that you couldn't shake off.
I do now, but I needed to lose the weight in order to get my motivation back and see some results in order to get me. And you're right, it's coupled with not only what I eat currently, I eat almost pure protein and meats and almost no carbs, and I am exercising most days. But I needed to lose that weight. However, it's very important to note, I am no longer taking these jabs.
Okay, so that has changed, but it sounds like you've been very on it, if you see what I mean. You've been very conscious of what the problem was, very conscious of what you were aiming for. You say you weren't treating it like a miracle drug.
No. Well, I don't know. I didn't really know what to expect at first, but as soon as it took away, I saw immediate results. Maybe not in the first month, but in month 2, I dropped like about 3-4 kilograms.
Yeah.
And then the same in the following month. And then it continued. And then I had the motivation then to start getting in the swimming pool and put a pair of swimming trunks.
That's what I mean. Okay, so miracle is moot. But somebody who isn't keen to get into the swimming pool, regardless of whether or not it's because of how they look, it's just because they're a bit, I don't even want to say lazy, Ryan, because that's not fair. It's a pejorative. So you're a poster boy for this stuff, I think. And yet you're not an example of somebody who hasn't made the necessary changes to ensure that it stays off when you come off. I love that. I love it. Thank you. Although, as David points out, there should be an Ofcom rule about mentioning doner meat so close to lunchtime. You could be wrong. I'll tell you what I have got, though. I think I've got an unhinged headline. And what I'm going to do, this is the Joe in Rayleigh strategy. It's a strange one, but it just made me think of something. I'm going to come back after this junction. As part of the Joe in Rayleigh strategy, I'm going to come back with an unhinged headline.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:49 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. This is, well, hang on, let's do this properly.
Unhinged headline.
I can't keep saying I think this might be the worst ever or the best ever, but I had to read this several times to reassure myself that I'd understood it correctly. This is by someone called Stephen Glover, writing in the Daily Mail. I want you to pay attention to this headline, okay? He writes, I pray Netanyahu won't give the likes of Lineker any more excuse to vilify what is still, despite everything, a civilized nation. This is a reference to Gary Lineker's repeated criticism of what Israel is doing in Gaza, with a little side order of him accidentally including or not noticing that a rat emoji, or not knowing that a rat emoji has distinct anti-Semitic connotations in a post that he shared on his Instagram, although that doesn't appear until the second last paragraph of the story. Nor is it mentioned that the Daily Mail a few years ago ran a cartoon by a cartoonist called Mac that showed a number of refugees crossing the border into the UK, actually accompanied by rats. It's a hideous trope that goes back long before the Holocaust and encompasses all refugees, not just Jewish refugees, but it was also used by the Nazis. So used by the Nazis and the Daily Mail as a way to demonize refugees. But you could be forgiven for not knowing that, I think. I heard Nick taking quite a few calls this morning from people who didn't know it. Most journalistic outlets are going to be more concerned with the growing number of people using the word genocide to describe what is happening in Gaza. Even this Stephen Glover chap in the Daily Mail today writes about Benjamin Netanyahu. I doubt he is genocidal. Remember when it was anti-Semitic even to suggest that he might be? Now you've got a Daily Mail columnist writing, I doubt he is genocidal. An awful lot of genocide experts disagree. So too, of course, does Kenneth Roth, the former head, the son of a Holocaust survivor, Jewish son of a Holocaust survivor, and 30 years running the Human Rights Watch. But this headline is incredible. It speaks so directly to the boiled brains of some people in this country. I pray Netanyahu won't give the likes of Lineker any more excuse to vilify what is still, despite everything, a civilized nation. Why do you want Israel to lift its blockade on aid into Gaza? Can I make a suggestion? It's because you don't want the famine to kick in, right? Well, why do you want Israel to stop bombing Gaza? Can I make a suggestion? It's because too many children have died. It's exactly the same reason why you don't want Hamas to launch any more atrocities on Israel. Too many people have died, right? Why do you want Benjamin Netanyahu to change his tactics? Because you want to avoid famine and you want to avoid death. Oh, you care about humans. According to this headline, Stephen Glover wants Benjamin Netanyahu to change tack because it's giving Gary Lineker grounds for objection. I mean, you could almost use the word content or material. Why do you want Benjamin Netanyahu to stop killing children in Gaza? Because it's giving Gary Lineker material. Why do you want Benjamin Netanyahu to lift the quite possibly illegal blockade on aid making its way into the Gaza Strip? Because it's giving Gary Lineker material. How could you... I mean, and I've read the article, and the headline is not one of those headlines that journalists like to disown when they're taken to task. It's happened to me on clips, so I shouldn't be too cheeky. I didn't write the headline. Headline fits the article. Why do you want this man to stop ordering the killing of children and the bombing of hospitals? Because it's giving Gary Lineker material. Imagine writing that, headlining it, being given the proof of your page. So you can see and go through it looking for mistakes and thinking, hang on a minute, I think I might have got this one a bit wrong. I mean, the article itself attacks the BBC, check, all of that. The kid who presented a programme and turned out to be the son of a Hamas civil servant. Yeah, we got that in there. I'm writing an article about why I want possible genocide to stop because it's giving Gary Lineker material. And there it is, arguably one of the most powerful examples ever of
Unhinged headline.
That's absolutely incredible, right? But there it is. Back to the weight loss drugs. I've got to stop calling them fat jabs. That sounds a bit wrong and lazy. Back to the weight loss drugs. Tracy is in Radlett. Tracy, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. Yes, what I want to say is one of the things I do is I go into schools and I talk to teenagers about these skinny jabs because I am so worried about this rebound effect. That guy was able to keep the weight off. Well, that's great. But part of the problem is that when you lose weight too fast, your body thinks it's in trouble. We're going back to evolution times.
Yes.
So it actually fights back by racking up your hunger hormones. And that's where these drugs work. They actually squash that noise. But it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop the fact that your metabolism slows down. So when people stop these drugs and their hunger comes back and nothing's been learned, they actually have to eat even less than before to actually keep that weight off.
Even less than before. Yes.
Yes, because their bodies lost the weight, but your metabolism slowed down.
So you're a nutritionist then. This is your field of expertise.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to urge you or to push you towards simplism, but time is of a premium.
Yes.
Do you offer a cautious welcome to the drugs, or do you wish that they'd never been discovered at all?
No. I think there is a place for them.
Yes, that's what I thought.
No, because obesity comes with health risks.
Yes, exactly.
But so do these drugs. But when there are people and there's no other option for them, and the health risks actually outweigh the risks of Ozempic or semaglutide or whatever it is, or Mounjaro, then absolutely. But they also need to address the psychological issues, which is one of the things I do in the schools, as to why they were eating in the first place.
It's like everything else, isn't it? I mean, because of course a lot of the attraction for politicians is the money-saving element. But of course, doing the backup that is necessary is going to be expensive. You're going to need psychological support. You're going to need nutritional support. You're going to need all sorts of support in place, and that's why it's not a miracle drug.
Yeah, and they've got to think that these people are going to be on it for life, a bit like statins or diabetes type 2. These people need to stay on it if they want to keep the weight off.
But we don't know yet whether that. I mean, I don't know much about side effects. Do we know yet that it's safe to take it for life? I think there's a 2-year lid on it at the minute, isn't there?
We don't know what the long-term effects. I do remember back in the day, I don't know if you remember, but there were miracle slimming pills that turned out to be amphetamines. And there were all kinds of problems when people tried to stop taking them. So that's why I try to encourage teenagers to not think about quick fixes. They've actually got the chance to think about what they're doing right now and go the healthy route rather than the diet route.
Yes.
But when people are older, it's so much harder. They've had years and years of it. And I have every sympathy, and that's who I think the drug should be, the injection should be for.
Nicely put. Really nicely put. And in fact, that word strategy that we've been joking about all morning is what is needed here, a proper strategy, not just a drug. I mentioned that time was of a premium because Aggie Chambray, LBC's political correspondent, has shimmied into the studio to tell me about what Keir Starmer has been up to.
I have indeed, James. So he is currently, as we speak, making this press conference with the Albanian leader. But the real news from today is that he has said that the UK will begin talks on sending failed asylum seekers to return hubs in third countries while they await deportation. And we can just hear a little clip from him talking at the press conference.
I'm also pleased to announce a joint statement of intent on defence industry cooperation. We will work together on the manufacture and sale of military vehicles. So another important step forward for our two countries, strengthening our national security, driving innovation and boosting economic growth for both of our nations.
So Keir Starmer says he's the first UK Prime Minister to come to Albania for a bilateral meeting. This is, of course, ahead of the meeting of the European political community in Albania tomorrow. But I think those return hubs could be really crucial. Now, we don't know exactly what potential partners there could be. There's been reporting previously, it could be Albania, could be Serbia, Bosnia, North Macedonia. But actually, while I've been in here, James, the Prime Minister of Albania has said no return hub for Britain in Albania. So he says that's a no from him. He says it's a model that takes time to be tested, but not one that he wants replicated in Albania. So interesting, that's been the big announcement from Sir Keir Starmer today, but it's a no from the Albanian Prime Minister.
What would it mean? So you'd be picked up here and taken there to have your case considered, or just it would be your case is already being considered because you've crossed the channel, which makes you technically irregular or illegal, and therefore you're going to go somewhere else as a stop-off point before you'll return to your country of origin or the first place that you applied for. Well, you can't do that because we left the Dublin Convention, so is that it?
So it's failed asylum seekers.
Oh,
so
okay, sorry.
It's not if you potentially could be processed as an asylum seeker. It's if you are failed as an asylum seeker. And part of the argument is that sometimes a failed asylum seeker, they say, will lose their paperwork and make it sort of frustrate the process, and they want to prevent that happening, and kind of this is part of their moves to deter people from doing that and deal with illegal migration.
So no word at all on opening up safe routes. It's entirely absent from all the conversation, and it increasingly doesn't look like an accident, does it?
It doesn't, no. It's potentially something if we don't hear about it, it will be asked about in the next few days, because, as I say, there's this EPC conference tomorrow, and there's also this big European conference on Monday too. So I'm sure it'll be asked about, but something they don't seem keen to talk about.
No, and I don't know whether it will be described as such, but it's not the same as the Rwanda scheme for a couple of the reasons that you've just highlighted. A, these are applications that have already failed, and B, it's not a country with a government that has been recently involved in or accused of genocide.
Exactly, and also that was asylum seekers before they were failed being sent to a Rwanda scheme, and also if they were successful in their asylum claim, they'd stay in Rwanda. Exactly.
Although no one seemed to understand that at the time, including cabinet-level Conservative politicians who toured the studios to extol the virtues of the scheme. Aggie Chambray, thank you. It is 1 minute after 12. It is Thursday. It is Mystery Hour after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Good Lord, is that the time? 5 minutes after 12, and you are listening to Mystery Hour with James O'Brien on LBC. A quick shout out, actually, to whoever it was that wanted to congratulate me on resisting the urge to say Moonjaro. It was Max, said, I can't believe, I'm very impressed at how you've managed to express the urge to say Moonjaro. Personally, I say it out loud like that every time I hear someone say it. Thank you, Max in Bermondsey. I feel seen. I did suppress it. I said it a couple of times, but I didn't overdo it. Mystery Hour, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. All together now. Your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. You can ring in with a question, and then you can ring in with an answer, or you can just not get involved at all and just let the radio magic wash over you like so much joy. If you are lucky enough to submit my favourite contribution of the week, you can even win a Mystery Hour board game. Full terms and conditions for that are at lbc.co.uk. And if you want to get your grubby little mitts on a board game, but not by way of winning this week's competition, you can go to mysteryhour.co.uk. Loads going on. 6 after 12. Is that it, Keith? Do I need to mention anything else? Yeah, all right. I guarantee you'll laugh out loud at least once between now and 1 o'clock. Oh, all right then. I guarantee you'll know more by 1 o'clock today than you do now. I can't necessarily guarantee that it will be information that you're remotely grateful for or find of any use whatsoever, nor can I guarantee that you'll have retained that information by 1:15. But by 1 o'clock today, you will know more than you do now. Should we just crack on? I think we should. Eric is in Midlothian. Eric, question or answer?
James, good afternoon. It's a question, James.
Carry on, Eric.
What is the mechanism within the brain that makes us fall asleep and wakes us up in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't just mean tiredness, or I mean.
No, I mean obviously in theory we doze off to sleep. We eventually just fall asleep. But is there a mechanism within the brain that goes, ping, you are sleeping now?
I just want to be 100% clear that I understand the question. You mean? No, I don't know what you mean. You mean the? Are you talking about the threshold for being asleep, or are you talking?
Yes, the line, the Rubicon, the line. You know,
I am asleep now.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because sometimes you wait. You're not quite sure whether you've been asleep or not.
Yeah.
You have a semi-dream.
Yeah, but there are times, obviously, when you are sleeping, so there's something in the brain telling you you are now sleeping.
What is the threshold? Yeah, okay. No, it's a good question. I don't think we've quite got the words right, but I get it. People will understand it. The thing that, like a switch that gets flicked. What's the switch?
Is the switch?
Right,
yeah,
you're asleep now.
Yeah.
And same, and then it gets unswitched, or rather it gets switched again. And you're awake. What would happen, do you think? Because often it's something that wakes you up, isn't it? Rather than a switch in your brain. If you could sleep in an absolute silence.
Yeah, what would wake you up? Yeah.
Would you ever wake up, Eric?
Well,
you'd have to, right? So you'd need a wee. You'd need a wee.
Yeah.
Even if you were sleeping in perfect circumstances. Well, at my age as well. There it is. Thank you for that.
I thought the question up last night when I was trying to get to sleep.
That's a good way to get to sleep, actually, trying to think about this programme. 9 minutes after 12 is the time. Thank you, Eric. Ryan is in Bristol. Ryan, question or answer?
Hi, James. I've got a question, please. But firstly, congratulations to you and the team for 1.4 million listeners on LBC.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I don't know that you need to include the team, but I shall pass those compliments nonetheless. Go on.
Right. Anyway, question is...
Yes.
So, as people may or may not be aware, there's currently a measles outbreak going on in several states in the U.S.
What? With Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the Secretary of State for Health? Colour me shocked. Colour me shocked.
Sound health secretary.
Yes.
Anyway, so I was reading up on that, and eventually I came across a term known, I'm pretty sure people know this as well, called patient zero. So,
yes,
it's the first person to get infected with a disease during a pandemic or epidemic. So, my question is, why are they referred to as patient zero, not patient one?
That's a good question. I've got a feeling it's linked to ground zero, but I don't know why I think a feeling that.
You don't know why? Do you think there's a relationship between the two?
Well, zero is where you start counting at zero. You don't start counting at one. No, that doesn't work.
Are you making stuff up? Or
I am. I'm not making stuff up, Ryan. I'm thinking out loud. They're two very different things. And where would this programme be without some thinking out loud? So patient zero, it's patient one. If you were going to count how many patients there are, if there were 10 patients, patient zero would be one of them, right?
Yeah, but if you include patient 0 to 10, there'd be 11 patients, wouldn't there?
Yeah, well, exactly. Or there'd be 9. Because because if patient 0 wasn't counted, there'd only be 9 patients. But there aren't 9 patients. There are 10. There are 10 patients.
There's 1 to 10, which is 10, and then there's patient 0, which makes 11.
Yeah, no, exactly that.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I agree. I like this. I don't know why, but you've reminded me. Talking of thinking out loud, I'll tell you later. It's all right. I've got to. No, I'm building up some tension. I'll tell you later. It's quite interesting. I've developed a new enthusiasm. It's a bit weird, all right, but I thought I'd share it. And you know how I get about cranes and bridges? This is something that comes up in Mystery Hour. Cranes and bridges delight me. They delight something inside me that I've never fully understood. Turns out something else does as well, and I've been indulging that delight this week in the company of 4 men called Michael, Claude, Harry and Peter. And I'm not going to tell you what it is until a bit later in the programme, but something that intrigues me that you don't know about. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I better not forget, otherwise the idea that I've been indulging myself with 4 men called Michael, Claude, Harry and Peter could create some very unfortunate ideas in your head. 12 after 12. So why is the first patient called patient 0 when they are, of course, patient number 1? And what happens when you actually fall asleep? I haven't got a pen, so I'm relying on Keith to remember all of these. Danielle is in Norwich. Danielle, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
I want to know, what is the most efficient way to peel an egg? A boiled egg.
To peel a boiled egg. Can you tell me, and take your time on this because I'm looking for a pen and I have to stand up. Tell me why this is so important to you, if that's okay, Danielle. And don't expect me to make any noises because I'm going to be quite far away from the microphone. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Over to you, Danielle.
So when you boil an egg and then you cool it down and then you peel it afterwards, sometimes it peels off like so perfectly, like it almost in one smooth go, like when you
Yes.
peel a tangerine really satisfactorily. And then at other times, it peels off in like loads of teeny tiny bits, and it's really frustrating. And I just feel like there must be,
A formula.
a perfect way. Like, do you have to cool it down? Does it depend on the quality of the egg?
Is there anything you can do? And you prefer to take it all off in one big piece rather than roll it around on the surface?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay, I like this. I quite like this question, but I don't want it to turn into a. I will do one of these a week. We can't do more than one of these a week. I don't think that would be weird. Although I'll tell you now, Davey's been in touch. He says, "I love this question in capital letters." So maybe there is an answer. We'll find out.
I think it's the thing it's the plight of many people.
Yeah, I like a boiled egg. Do you know what I just found when I was searching for a pen?
What?
I found a fountain pen in the studio. Who uses a fountain pen in
That's old school.
a radio station in 2025? I think of the damage that has Jacob Rees-Mogg been in here while I've been away? Who's still? No, that would be a quill. That would be a feather, wouldn't it? Someone on the team has been using a fountain pen in the studio. I want to take bets on who it was. Danielle, a lovely question, and indeed an excellent question. No? Oh. Russell's in Battle in East Sussex. Russell, question or answer?
Yeah, that was really an excellent question, James.
Thank you very much. Well played, Russell. Excellent. Good work. Good work.
It's another food question, to be honest.
Okay.
So I love orange juice. Also, nice to speak to you again, once again.
The drink or Edwyn Collins' famous band? No, that wasn't called orange juice. Was it called orange? Anyway, the drink. You love the drink.
The drink, yes. I don't know Edwyn Collins.
Oh.
Anyway, and the thing is, in the morning, once you brush your teeth, if you drink orange juice after brushing your teeth, after rinsing your mouth, it tastes horrible.
It does.
There has to be some chemical component in toothpaste that causes it. I've tried many toothpaste varieties, and still it's horrible.
It's particularly horrible. It's particularly horrible, and it is specific to orange juice.
Yes.
It's well, I mean, obviously, in terms of life advice, which I also give out on the programme occasionally, in terms of life advice, don't do it the other way round. Oh no, that doesn't. Yeah. Drink your orange juice and then brush your teeth.
Yes, but that's a bit grim, isn't it?
No, why is it a bit grim? Because do you get bad breath in the mornings, Russell? Is that what you're telling me?
Definitely.
I
could kill a horse.
It's a trick. Kill a horse. Well, there's your guaranteed laugh out loud. Well, mine at least. Okay, so it's not. Well, I mean, I don't think there's anything you can do about that, the horse killing element of your mornings, except do it the other way round. But then, of course, you can't because. Yeah, all right. Why? Just the science. There'll be a reason. There'll be one little chemical or something that is in either orange juice or toothpaste. Toothpaste it will be in that reacts to something in the orange juice to create that absolutely horrible flavour in your gob when you brush your teeth after drinking orange juice. Russell, lovely stuff. It's nice to hear your voice again. It's 12:16.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's a manky old fountain pen. It's not like a smart one. It's it looks like a biro, and then you take the lid off and it's a fountain pen. It's run out of ink. But who do you think uses a fountain pen in the studio? I think I'm going to... Well, no, because you can't go definitive. Unless whoever it is rings in and says, oh, that's mine, James. I don't know why. I've got a feeling it might be Ben Kentish. Just, I don't know, no particular reason, just a hunch. 18 minutes after 12 is the time. Don't forget that at some point in the next hour, I'm going to reveal to you my new passion that I've been indulging with 4 men. And it's a bit like my passion for cranes and bridges, but I don't want to give too much away. I cannot afford to forget this one, though, all right? It's the Joe in Rayleigh stratagem. I'll come back immediately after the 12:30 news and reveal what my new thing is, my new jam. Alex is in the New Forest. Alex, question or answer?
It is a question, please, James.
Carry on, Alex.
Right, this might be rubbish, by the way. It's been checked beforehand, and we were trying to work out the best way to explain it.
Yes.
But is there a universal tempo for the spoken word?
How do you mean?
Right, so the way we tried to explain it before, if you were talking at your normal, unelevated pace with somebody...
Yes.
If you spoke to the exact same conversation in, say, English, and then you have the same exact conversation in a different language, would you say it faster or slower in a different language, maybe? Or is everyone at the same pace?
So it's not a question of individuals, it's a question of different languages.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain. It's not the individual.
Because we all talk at different speeds, perhaps. There's no universal speed that we speak at. But if you could somehow speak any language in the world, is there something universal about the tempo you would speak them at?
Yeah, as human beings, is there why do we speak at this particular speed?
I think I speak Greek faster than I speak English. I mean, if I knew all the words, I think I'd speak Greek faster than I speak English. And how are we going to measure it? It's like vowel and consonants per minute or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah. That's
it's not going to be words. It's not going to be the communication of it. It's going to be the number of vowels and consonant sounds that you make in the space of a minute.
Yeah. That's the problem I'm trying to explain as well, yeah.
No, we've done it. We've explained it. I just don't think anyone's going to know the answer.
Well, then you can also extend it to reading in another language. Do you read faster, for example? You're open a sort of barrel of worms. It's just, there's so many questions there, isn't there?
I wonder whether, in fact, I don't normally read out text, but this is quite a clever one from Callum. You know how long Shakespeare's plays are, Alex?
Yeah.
5 acts, and they can be really long sometimes. Callum reckons that Old English, or Shakespeare era English was spoken quite a bit more quickly back then. And that kind of answers your question. So the play wouldn't take as long. Because I've often thought, because they didn't have seats even sometimes. They really stay on their feet for the whole 4 hours or whatever it was. But if the play was, and I think Hamlet actually has a line about say the words trippingly. So if it turned out that English was spoken faster 300 years ago, we'd know that there is no universal tempo for 400 years ago, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Yeah, so I'm just making sure I've understood your question. A few people suggesting that Greek and Irish and lots of other questions are faster. We shall see. It's a lovely question. Where did it come from? Go on.
It's a tricky one.
Oh, right, I see. Not rude, just tricky. 21 after 12 is the time. Mike's in Cambridge. Mike, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's a question. I've got a feeling you might know the answer to this.
Uh-oh.
I know. You're a clever chap. We had conclave last week, and the Vatican announced to the world we had a new pope with smoke.
Yes, white smoke.
Why, James?
Wasn't it a shame? Did you hear Henry Riley's new feature on the programme on the day before it was confirmed that we had a new pope? We were just getting it set up. We were getting some jingles done. Who's going to come in? Pope watch. And he black smoke, no pope. And then he left the studio again. I was on my way home and they announced a new pope. We'd only done the feature once. Why did they use smoke? I mean, the obvious answer is because they always have, to which your response would be, all right, why did they start off using smoke?
Yes.
Well, I know.
That's my question.
No, well, I think we can work it out together, can't we?
Well, you could raise a flag, you could ring a bell.
You wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see it. Wouldn't see it as far away. Smoke was going to be more visible, more further afield than anything else they could have done.
You couldn't hear a big bell, no?
No.
I think you can hear. I think you can hear Big Ben a lot. I mean, it's not exactly
the iconic timepiece, Big Ben.
It's not a great big industrial chimney, is it?
No.
It's only a little wispy pipe.
It is a little wispy pipe.
It's a wispy pipe, James.
I got all their albums. I saw them at Glastonbury in 1984. Why? Someone, Sheila Fogarty will know this. She'll be here in half an hour. So if no one's got it by then, she will.
Well, I can't wait that long, James.
Well, I'll do my best, all right? I'll do my best, Mike. So why the smoke for the Pope? The Pope smoke. Mate. No, you're on. The tempo for the spoken word, the teeth and the orange juice, the eggs and the peeling. Patient zero. Keith's got quite a good answer to that one, but he's not allowed on the programme. And actually, he may not even exist. And the sleep. What happens? What is the thing that gets flicked when we actually fall asleep? 23 minutes after 12 is the time. Grant is in Woking. Grant, question or answer?
It's an answer, James. How are you?
Very well indeed. No, that's a question.
Yes. No. Well. Yes.
Carry on.
You're absolutely right. Answer to the sleep question.
Yeah. Oh, good.
So it's to do with a chemical in your body called adenosine.
Oh yes.
And adenosine is like, I'm not sure of where it kind of comes from, but basically as your body does stuff throughout the day, immune system doing stuff, you're moving your muscles and all of this, that and the other, it will release a chemical called adenosine. And there are specific transmitters or receptors, I think is the correct term, in your brain that adenosine will kind of build up on. And when you kind of hit a critical mass of adenosine built up on those receptors, that's what makes you feel really, really sleepy, and makes you like eventually kind of fall asleep. And it's your body kind of saying to you, right, we need to.
And that is fascinating, and you'll probably get a round of applause, but it's not what the question was.
What
is the thing that flicks? So I'm awake, I'm asleep. What happened?
Fine.
You see?
It is.
It's a tricky one.
I see what you mean.
Don't start improvising, Grant.
No. So what I can tell you on that is like there is like a certain build-up of adenosine that will tell your body to just go, but I couldn't kind of tell you any more than that. You might need a specialist in the field.
Okay. Well, you've given us some interesting information.
Cool.
So you get half a round of applause. What are your qualifications for the information that you've given us?
I read a book about this called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker, and it's really fascinating.
That sounds
I would just.
But not
really
what we need is Matthew Walker to do a sequel called What Happened When We Fell Asleep.
Yes, I'm sure that
it's in there.
It's in there, and I've just kind of forgotten it or whatever because it was a few years ago that I read it.
No problem.
But yeah, no.
Round of applause for Grant.
It's going to be to do with that.
Of course it is. Well, of course it is. It's the point at which the adenosine reaches such a level, perhaps, that you have to fall asleep. That could be the answer, but you get a little one of these. That was quite long, actually. Simon is in Ikaria. Kalimera.
Hello, James. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Question or answer?
It's a question.
Go on, then.
Kalimera, by the way. How are you? Everything good?
Polikala, nekasi.
Right, so my question is this. Where does the phrase hat trick come from?
Oh, I knew
I'm
this.
sure it must have come up before.
It's in the game, mate. It's in the board game, but I've blooming forgotten, haven't I?
Well, there you go.
You get given the hat. You got given the hat if you got 3 wickets in a row in cricket or something like that.
I've got no idea. That's what I was asking.
I quite like it. I thought you were going to answer the question about speaking quickly and saying that Greek people speak much.
Do you know what? I was going to ask that question as well because I've been trying to learn Greek, and do you know what? The Greeks speak like a machine gun.
Sounds so angry all the time. Sounds like they're arguing, and they're not.
It's like really.
I agree. Lots and lots of languages are like that. I think that we're going to answer. We just need someone who can go definitive on it. But I think Alex's question has already been answered anecdotally. Of course, there's not a universal tempo. Some languages are spoken much quicker and slower than others, but we haven't proved it yet.
And you're speaking faster now, mate.
I'm speeding up now because my brain is moving into overdrive. Because I'll tell you why I'm speaking faster now, Simon. I'm speaking faster now because I've got lots going on in my head. So, for example, why am I thinking about Jimmy Anderson?
Well, but why? If a striker scores 3 goals, why is it called a hat trick?
Yeah, because it would have been. It started off in cricket and it would have moved on to other things. Jimmy Anderson's breakthrough moment in a one-day international in, I'm going to say Melbourne, but I could be wrong. No, it wasn't Melbourne because it wasn't against Australia. I think it was against Pakistan.
Well, hat-tricks must have come before Jimmy Anderson.
Yeah, I know, but it's a cricket thing. I'm just explaining to you why I'm thinking of Jimmy Anderson, and that's why my voice speeded up. I wasn't telling you that I was going to provide you with the answer. That was the mystery. Why has Jimmy Anderson popped into my brain? Answer, because I was with him 2 days ago and we talked about the hat-trick that he got. All I can remember was Sammy was the third one and it was in a one-day game. I think it's in cricket, 3 wickets in 3 balls and they give you a hat. But I can't go definitive because I can't remember why or who or when or where.
Fantastic. Give yourself a round of applause,
Not yet,
James.
no, because I haven't gone definitive. How good is your Greek now? Are you getting the hang of it?
It's improving very, very slowly, frankly.
Siga.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that's slowly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Look at
Yeah,
this.
slowly.
Knocking it out of the park. All right. Round of applause for me for my.
Listen, before you go.
Yeah, no, go on, come back. What? Yeah.
When you going to come and visit Ikaria, mate? You need to come over.
I would love to actually. I just think every time you ring in, I always try to work out whether I've actually been there before, but I haven't, have I? I'm getting it mixed up with somewhere else.
No, you haven't.
I know I haven't.
You definitely haven't.
Well, you can't say I definitely haven't, because you wouldn't. Yeah. I could have gone there without you noticing.
Well, yeah, you could have.
You take care. Hello, taxi, Simon. Stay safe. It's coming out to 12:30. We've got Eric's question about sleep, which has kind of not been on, but it hasn't been answered. Why is it patient 0 when in fact it's patient number 1? What's the best way to peel a boiled egg? Why does brushing your teeth taste so foul if you've just had a glass of orange juice? What is does the tempo for the spoken word vary between languages? Yes, it does, but we haven't got definitive yet. And why do they use smoke to announce the Pope? I think they also use a bell, don't they? The problem is, of course, you could get one bell mixed up with another bell. Yeah, there's nothing unique about it. I know you're going to say you could get some smoke mixed up with some other smoke, but you couldn't if it was coming out of a very specific place. With a bell, you can't see where the bell is. That's science, that is. Tim Humphries here now with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:32 is the time you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And I've remembered, it's the Joe and Rayleigh strategy. I'm going to tell you the thing I promised I'd tell you. I wonder if this will last until the end of tomorrow's show. Well, actually, we haven't got to the end of today's yet. So I've shared with you in the past my schoolboyish enthusiasm for things like cranes and bridges, especially cranes, actually. I just think they're great. If I ever see a crane arriving in town, I'll pull over to the side, not driving. I'll stop and watch. Not the bird, no, the big old things. The birds are pretty cool too. You can see some at Pensforth in Norfolk. There's some lads in work at the moment doing the lifts. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever had a real old look at what is behind the doors of the lift when the lift isn't there? What they're doing, Michael, Claude, Harry and Peter, who work for Intelligent Lifts, I think they all get a pay rise if I mention that on air, they're replacing the actual cables. There was a kid at my school who was fascinated by washing machines. This is when we were about 9 or 10 years old, and he would go to the school laundry. Yeah, all right, I went to a posh school. He'd go to the school laundry, and he would be mesmerised by the washing machines. He'd watch the washing machines for hours. He was a sweet boy. And I'm the same. With these, they were very friendly and welcoming, but I don't think they believed me when I said I'd like to actually just sit here and watch you work all day. It sounds weird, I grant you, for a start. And of course, if you do something all day, you probably forget how fascinating it is to people who know nothing about it. For example, there's lights inside the lift shaft all the time. Why? For the rare occasions when the maintenance people need to get in there. So they'll do a survey about once a month. But now, Peter's on top of the lift with actual wire cutters, cutting through the cables of the... It's just incredible. And then you can see on some of them, you can see the ghost of where the staircase, not an actual ghost, the ghost of where the staircase used to be. Because the lift shaft is probably going to go into a slot where you would have had staircases before lifts were invented. Absolutely fascinating work. And there's something about it. I was trying to work out what it had in common. Why was I getting similar feelings to the feelings I get about cranes and bridges? And it's engineering, most obviously, and I find engineering so exciting. And B, it's about man's dominion over nature. So, a crane lets you almost defy physics. A bridge lets you defy geography, and a lift lets you defy gravity. I just found it absolutely riveting, and they were so nice to me that I thought I'd give them a shout on the radio, because I'll tell you what I felt like. I felt like the lad from school who used to like staring at washing machines. Oh, that's amazing. So lifts or elevators, there it is. Thank you, chaps. 12:35 is the time. Darren is in Newcastle. Darren, question or answer?
It's a question, mate.
Carry on, Darren.
When you watch a film or a TV show, usually a drama...
hang on. Shouldn't you say film?
Film.
It's film in your part of the world, isn't it?
Film.
Okay.
Or go to the pictures.
Carry on. Yeah.
When a character produces a photo, usually of them as a child or a young adult...
I love this.
Is that the actual photo of the actor or actress?
That's such a lovely question. I mean, listen, I doubt that there's a rule. I'm pretty sure that on some occasions they'll have found they've improvised another picture, and on other occasions they've brought in a picture of themselves. Sometimes they'll have to use technology because you need the picture to be in company with other people or in a certain context. But I love that. I have that. I'm like you. I have that. Those sort of thoughts pop into my head. Have you ever rang a phone number that's appeared in a TV or a film just to see?
I rang one years ago.
I did when I was a kid, just to see if there was anybody there. And it was a disconnected phone line. It was it was a non-phone line. I don't know who could. Well, there'll be people listening that can answer this specific to their experiences. Yeah. I'd be amazed if there's a hard and fast rule. What we really want is an actor who has done this.
Yeah,
don't
definitely.
we? We want an actor who has done this.
And probably more modern day stuff now, probably use AI more regular now, won't they? That'll be more in use, I'd have thought, rather than bringing old photos in.
And just bring in a picture of yourself in school uniform, and we can use it in the. I love it. So we just want someone who's done it, either as a props person or as a performer. I like that, Darren. Thank you. It is 12:37. I need some answers. Let me remind you what we've got. What is the actual trigger in your brain that puts you into sleep, as opposed to being absolutely exhausted, or even in that semi-dream zone where you might think you're asleep but you're not? What happens in the brain when you actually tip over into sleep? Why is the first patient in a pandemic called patient 0, not patient 1? Is there a recognised superlative way of peeling a boiled egg? Why do your teeth go all weird when you brush them after drinking orange juice? Is there a universal tempo for the spoken word? The reason I misspoke then was because I was about to say smoke on the next one. Why do they announce the new Pope using smoke? What's the origin of the hat trick in sporting terms? And do they use photos of the real actor as a young person in TV and film dramas and comedies and whatever else you prefer? Teresa's in Glasgow. Teresa, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
Why do people from Northern Ireland call themselves British?
Oh, Lord. This is going to be controversial.
Well, you mentioned it the other day when you said about Great Britain and United Kingdom.
I did.
I understand why they call themselves Unionists, because they're part of United Kingdom, but they're not part of Britain.
They're not, no.
So why do they call themselves British?
Because they've got no choice. Because they also call themselves Irish.
Well,
sometimes, not.
Well, interestingly...
There's no United Kingdom-ish, is there?
Well, you can call yourself a unionist.
Yeah, you can call yourself a unionist, but that's not specific to Northern Ireland. Unionist is a word that applies in other areas as well. And also, there's plenty of people in Northern Ireland who aren't unionists, Teresa. But, as I said...
I'm well aware.
I thought you might be, but let's be careful. So there's nothing else they can call themselves. United Kingdom-ish is not a thing. I think that came up in the conversation that you were listening to earlier, isn't it?
When there was foot and mouth in Ireland, Dr. Ian Paisley said, "We are British, but our cows are Irish."
Oh. I don't even know what that means.
Well, because there was an embargo on cattle being moved.
I know. I mean, I don't think it's a mystery in the sense that it is. I mean, they might well call themselves British, but what else could they? They can't call themselves English because they're not, and they don't any more than the Welsh are or the Scottish. But there's no, and then they don't really often want to call themselves Irish, as Dr. Ian Paisley points out in the intervention that you've just described. So they've got, and also the Britons, the people of Britain. I mean, there is nothing else they could call themselves. If they want to establish their kinship with Britain as opposed to their kinship with Ireland, even though they are not of Britain, they are British. Or Northern Irish, of course. British possible. What are you doing that noise for?
Because it's Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Yes, I know that. But what else could they call themselves?
Unionists.
Oh, I don't know why I bothered, but that wouldn't work, would it, for a Republican who's also Northern Irish? So they can't call themselves that. What works as a description of everybody in Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom? What is the word they can use to distinguish themselves from the Irish?
Unionist.
No, but you can't keep saying that, can you? Because it doesn't apply to Jerry Adams or various other people in Northern Ireland who are Northern Irish. 20 to 1 is the time. Thank you, Teresa. The question is on the board. Stop saying unionist. Joanne is in South Shields. Joanne, question or answer?
Good morning, James.
Hello
and
there.
Question.
Oh, carry on. Hello.
I was plagued for saying film at art school, by the way.
Well, I think it's a lovely little affectation saying film. Anyway,
film.
Sorry
My
for your
friend
plaguing.
didn't.
Carry on.
Sorry. Here's the question. I've noticed, in my family, there's two sets of toe tights. My sister and my mother have small, pudgy, even cherubic type toes. They look lovely in sandals.
Oh.
Me and my dad have what I'd call the ET toe.
Yes.
It's where the toe next to the big toe is long and thin, like E.T.'s finger, and it's good because you can pick pencils up and screwdrivers and things, but it looks pretty bad in a sandbox. Now, I've thought, is this genetic? Like, you get light blue eyes for the Northern Hemisphere, brown eyes from warmer countries. Is there a real lineage where you are either an E.T. tool or a lovely, even, pudgy cherubic tool person?
I think I've got an E.T. tool. I'd say it makes it easier to hang out of trees, Joanne.
Yeah, no. Maybe I'm part of the missing link. I don't know.
That could be the genetic explanation. So, is there? I mean, yeah, but there must be, mustn't there? A genetic so you mean two distinct? I nearly said phenotypes then, and I have no idea what that word means. So it's a good job I didn't say it. You've got two distinct things.
Yes. You look at people's feet when you dog walk. That's what I do, and I'm starting to seem odd when I say to people, "Nice toes."
Yes.
So I've stopped.
I like to. I mean, a toe is a nice little thing if you're lucky enough to have nice toes poking out the top of your sandals. I'm quite blessed in the toe department. I'm not going to lie, but I think they lean more towards the long and ET-like as opposed to the cherubic and pudgy. Right, you're on. So is it one toe or the other? Is it like innies and outies, blue eyes and brown eyes? Is it long toes and short toes?
Yes.
03456060973. I love that one. Thank you, Joanne. It's the British Isles, isn't it? It's the British Isles, is it? Yeah. Anyway, someone else can have a crack at that. Oh, here we go. Fiona is in God's own country of Kidderminster. Fiona, question or answer?
Hi, James. I've got an answer for you.
Carry on, Fiona.
So the eggshells are easy to peel on older eggs.
Ah.
And they stick on really fresh, from your own hen's eggs, if you've sort of picked them that morning or the day before or whatever.
How interesting. So there's no optimal mode of peeling, but there is a way to ensure an easily peeled egg, and that is to do the opposite of what you do when you're trying to get a nicely poached egg and lean towards the older one as opposed to the younger one, the newer one.
When you want, go on to the poaching, you want a really fresh
egg for poaching. A really fresh egg for poaching, but a really old egg for ease of peeling.
And it'll come out the shape of the egg itself, as if it was in the shell, doesn't it? Practically,
if you're really lucky. I mean, if it's fresh out of the chicken, then you can actually do. Yes, your qualifications.
Well, I used to be a chef, and now I'm a farmer.
Where did you work as a chef? Not in Kidderminster.
Oh, no, I'm not from Kidderminster. I'm only here sort of temporarily.
Well, don't say it like that. It's a lovely place.
Well, yes, it is. It is lovely, James.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
It's God's own country. But
what are you doing? What are you doing there, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it's a very long story, but it's temporary. I've just been here for 2 years. I run the highest welfare dairy. I sort of pioneered a method of dairying without cruelty, and it's being good for the planet, good for the soil, good for human health.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going back down to my home county of Herts, but for my first time ever, we're in a TB zone. I don't know if you know that, but the day we were due to move, I got a reactor, and
Fiona, I'm sorry.
And I had to shoot her, just a young heifer I bred in calf. Sorry, we're not talking about that. But one day I wanted to do this because one day I really want to talk to you about farming, veganism, and I'm not anti-vegan. What I do comes from a vegan perspective.
I hear you. Maximising animal welfare, and I'm sorry you went through that. I thought you were. I thought you were getting tearful because you've been stuck in Kidderminster for 2 years, and that would have put me in a really tricky situation.
Well, I know. I mean, I've made just a very few friends that I'm keeping very tight, and they've really looked after me because what happened was I lost my tenancy in Suffolk, and I've been away from my family just to save my herd and the method.
Oh, well, thank you.
I've had three grandchildren, but it's called the Carpetfoot Dairy. I'm not running. I've stopped selling. I thought I was going to retire. I got burnt out, but we've got a new hope and a very special farm in Hertfordshire.
Oh, how exciting! Well, it feels a bit paltry, if you pardon the pun.
Yeah.
In the context of what you've just shared with us, but I'm going to give you a mystery hour round of applause.
Thank you. Can I just tell you why? What happens to the egg?
Very quickly, because I'm already late.
Oh my God! I can't believe the Carpetfoot Dairies had a mystery hour round of applause. Thank you so much.
No,
Thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much. Okay, so what happens is with old eggs, is that I've got to get this right because I kept
It's the air between the membrane and the shell.
Yeah, so you know this, and the pH level drops, doesn't it? No, it's higher.
Right, it's one or the other, or it maybe stays the same.
But it's more acid. I know it's more acid. The albumum's more acid in a fresh egg,
yes.
And then when you boil it, it sticks to the shell. It bonds with the membrane of the shell. You know that
it's all
membrane?
there. Yeah. So, I mean, we haven't really. You've gone definitive. We've done that. Danielle isn't going to be able to improve her egg peeling skills unless she's got well, you just look at the sell-by date. The closer you are to the eat-by date, the better your job you'll be able to do of peeling it. Fiona, you take care of yourself, seriously. I'm sorry for what you've been through. You clearly managed to come out of it smiling, which is the main thing. And who knows, there might be a mystery hour board game on its way to Kidderminster shortly as well. It depends. It's still up for grabs. It's 12:47.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:50. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Mystery Hour continues. I'm quite jealous of Chris. Chris has been in touch, so I just wanted to one-up you on your excitement about lifts. Make me sound like a weirdo. I'm an architect and was recently on a site visit with a lift specialist who parked the roof of the lift car below the floor we were standing on and let me stand on top of the lift car in the shaft, purely as a response to my own excitement. They even offered to take a photo of me to show to my girlfriend, but I foolishly tried to act all professional and politely declined. How can you act all professional when you're standing on top of a lift pretending you're Bruce Willis? Absolutely ridiculous. But I don't think the insurers would allow that here. They probably wouldn't allow it there. It's a good job you didn't tell me your name, Chris. Louise is in Billericay. Back to Mystery Hour. Question or answer, Louise?
Answer, please, James.
Take your time.
So the toothpaste one.
Oh, yes.
Right, so there's a simple scientific explanation for it and actually a couple of ways you can avoid it if you're interested after.
Oh, yes.
So we have our taste buds, which are pretty complex. We just go taste buds, but when you look into them, people that like information like you and I, it's quite fascinating. And so you have receptors all over your tongue, and some of them are for sweet, some of them are for salty, some of them are for bitter, and they all sort of are being fired all the time with things that we eat, right?
Yes.
And when you brush your teeth, the toothpaste foams, and there's something called a surfactant in it called sodium lauryl sulfate, known as SLS.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing that makes the toothpaste foam actually blitzes your taste buds. So it actually does two things concurrently. It suppresses your sweet receptors, and it disrupts something called a I can never say this, and I know the word, phosphopolylipide.
Oh, yes.
Right, and those are the things that stop you tasting the bitterness.
Oh, okay.
So at the same time, it's lowering the sweet receptors, suppressing those, and it's blocking the things that stop you tasting the bitterness. So it's like
tastes completely weird. It tastes completely weird. Qualifications?
I'm a bit of a freak because I have overdeveloped bitter taste buds.
Oh, really? What does that mean?
I can't. Things like gin and tonic and anything that's got a really bitter note, I'm going to be a bit gross. When you were a kid, did you ever put your finger in your ear and accidentally put it in your mouth?
No comment. What do you mean when I was a kid? Keith's doing it now. I think that's called auto-suggestion. Keith, stop it.
That's the best way, having talked to people over the years, that bitter stuff tastes to me.
Oh, you poor thing. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't know what you're missing, I suppose, in a way. But so nothing bitter. So that quite bittersweet or that pleasurable bitterness that some of us enjoy is never going to work for you. What's the quick advice on how Russell can avoid this?
Okay, so either the simplest and obvious one is brush your teeth after you've had your orange juice.
Yeah, you can't do that because he's got breath like a horse.
So what you
That's not what he said. He said he's got breath that could kill a horse. It's even worse. Go on.
So you can brush and leave it for a few minutes for most people because that surfactant thing will break down. So if you just start brushing a bit earlier.
I think you're supposed to, because it can damage the enamel if you don't wait a bit at some time. But it depends how desperate you are to get your orange juice down your neck. Have a round of applause, Louise. I've only got 5 minutes left. I want to squeeze in a few more answers. You got a lovely laugh. I think that would have cheered up a lot of people. It has me. Dan, I didn't even need cheering up. Daniel's in Northumberland. Daniel, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on, Daniel.
To the hat trick question.
Yes.
It's a cricketing term. Originated back in the sort of dim and distant early days of cricket,
yes.
Particularly the sort of Victorian era.
Sounds about right.
A bowler took 3 consecutive wickets, and there's some debate over what's the true story here. Some say that he was presented with a hat by his teammates because gentlemen wore hats back in those days. The other story is that he used his hat and passed it round his teammates, and they put in shillings and gifts, etc. But
I prefer the first version. What are your qualifications?
Keen club cricket player for the fantastic Monks Eaton Cricket Club, and all-round cricket badger.
That'll do nicely. Have a round of applause. Monks Eaton Cricket Club, is it?
That's right, yeah.
That sounds nice. Have a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Stevenson. Was he called Stevenson?
The first person?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a definitive name.
I've got a feeling I think this is on the board game. It's on the board game, this. I think he's called Stevenson.
There's a guy called DVP Wright who was presented with a hat for bowling a hat trick, but that's meant to be...
Not the first one. That was part of... Yeah, there's a tradition had already been established by that. Anyway, you got yourself a round of applause. Well played, Daniel. And good luck to Monks Eaton this season. Jay is in Luton. Jay, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
So this is for the it was the one about the baby pictures on TV shows.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So it's a half and half answer, but yeah. So yes, sometimes they do use photos of them. I'm only saying this because there was a film that I watched. There was a whole plot against the main character, and then this girl and her friend were like, "Oh yeah, we've known each other since school," and there were actual photos of them from school times. I've seen it on several different occasions where they've used actual baby photos. But if not, if the actor cannot be bothered to get their own photo in, they'll make digital AI photos.
Qualifications?
I'm a cameraman. I've worked in film for 7 years now. So
okay. Have you ever seen and you've worked with an actor who's brought their own photo in?
No, I haven't worked with anyone. Yeah.
I'm going to give you. What are you working on at the moment? Anything exciting?
No, and plus I can't say. So.
Oh, woo! He's working on Traitors. Have a round of applause, Jay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Patrick's in Southampton. Question or answer, Patrick?
Hiya, I've got an answer.
Take your time.
Thank you.
Actually, don't. Hurry up. Sheila's here.
Okay, it's for your language question.
Ah, yes.
So basically the short answer is no. There's different types of languages. You have whistling languages where you literally whistle. And then you've got kind of tonal languages which are more popular than kind of traditional language. Well, I say traditional. More popular than the language we're familiar with.
Yeah.
So in Mandarin there's like 4 different tones. So
really?
So like instead of saying I, you would say war, and you have to hold the tone down and up. And yeah.
So there's absolutely, it's not just no, it's like no.
Yeah, pretty much.
No way. Have we got universal qualifications?
So my partner's from China and she's tired of having to speak English to me. So I studied Mandarin.
Really? How are you getting on?
Badly.
Have a round of applause to make up for it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Lewis is in carefully. Lewis, question or answer?
I've got an answer for your toe question.
Oh, go on then.
It's a normal anatomical variation called Morton's toe.
Right. Which is the long one or the short one?
It's having a longer. I think she called it ET.
She called it ET toe. I prefer Morton's toe personally.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what it's called.
Really?
It's. We don't know why it happens, but it's actually not because the index toe is longer. It's because the big toe is shorter.
That's one of my all-time favourite Mystery Hour moments. That's just perfect.
I thought you'd appreciate that. It happens. It happens because the big toe stops growing prematurely.
Well, there you go. Morton's toe, named after the man who first sort of named it, discovered it.
Presumably, yeah. It happens in about 47% of men, and it's more common in people of Greek descent.
Really?
Yeah,
shorter, big. That's all the flip flops. That's all the flip flops, isn't it? They invented the sandals. That'll be why. Qualifications.
Exactly. I'm a physiologist. I teach anatomy and physiology, and this is something that somebody asked me a couple of years back, and it's stuck in my mind.
Oh, I'm loving it. Lewis, have a round of applause on me.
Thank you very much.
No, well, it's absolutely perfect mystery hour moment there. It's not because the other toe is longer, it's because the big toe is shorter. And Keith, what was the name of the lovely lady with the cows? Fiona in Kidderminster. And it's not nepotism. Well, I mean Kidderminsterism, because she's only there temporarily, but she gets the mystery hour board game. And our love and gratitude. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on catch up, which also, of course, means if we forget all about the Joe in Rayleigh strategy, you can use the LBC app to rewind and find out whether or not I've given the answer to the question. Anyway, never mind. You can read and watch all the latest there from LBC. Put your news categories into the order that you want. Check whether James has remembered to do the things he promised he'd do. Pause and rewind live radio and listen to a range of podcasts. Download the all-new official LBC app for free from your app store. Now, Tom Sawbrick with you at 4. Sheila Fogarty with you now.
I've got that toe thing.
Have you?
Yeah.
I think I have.
Greek toe, I'm going to call it.
Did you know it was because your big toe was shorter?
No, I thought my index toe was bigger.
Why do they use smoke at the Pope?
Smoke at the Pope in the conclave?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't remember.
Flipping it. I bigged you up.
I should know, shouldn't I, from my
recent
recent trip there. Never mind. Well, it's a good way it's a smoke signal, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but why?
That language thing was fascinating as well. I shouldn't do a review of the programme when it's over. But it's really good. I know Scouse isn't a language, but I'd like to think it is.
It's a unit.
And it's a tonal language.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah, they're down faster than other parts of England as well. Definitely.
And you can say the word all right 15 different ways to make a different meaning.
All right.
Yeah, it's true. It's all true. Thanks, James.
James O'Brien on LBC.